All right, that's enough of that. So,
My dog has catfish hairs. It's weird.
Catfish hairs?
Like that come out of the side of his face.
Oh, sure.
Like, not in like the nose whisker way, but in like the side of. Anyway.
Catfish hairs.
Catfish hairs.
Yummy.
Fried doggy.
All right. So, do you want to start this biz, or would you like me to?
Sure, I will.
All right. What the hell? Just what the? Yeah. Jesus. My Twitter. If male video game characters were dressed like female characters, and I cannot unsee this now. Oof. No. Yeah. Okay.
Honestly, I have a feeling there'll be a lot of I don't even know what you'd call that. It's not camel toe on a guy.
Just imagine just gauze wrap junk.
Well, I'm thinking it'd be like more like what would you call it if there's two billiard balls wrapped in gauze and then pulled tightly over a banana? I don't know.
I just don't know. Just don't know.
It's something to think about.
It is something to think about.
I hope we're live.
We are live.
That was quality of material.
We are absolutely live.
Nobody heard it, but yeah, it's good stuff. All right, are you ready?
Oh, no, we're not, because we're not recording yet. So,
Oh.
Good thing I noticed that. Now we're recording.
Oh, splendid. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, here we go then. Let's start the show. Welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the Super Number One Cycling Podcast, the podcast for the casually hardcore in the cycling world. I am Kevin, and my co-host over there, Andrew.
Hi.
Hi. I have nothing clever to say. So,
well, I'm not sure I do either right now.
That's how it goes. That's how it goes, because it is the middle of the afternoon. This is like almost a new early time for us to ever record.
It's kind of nice, honestly. I can see the day light still. And it's Friday, and it's 4 o'clock, and I'm drinking a beer, and I'm not at work, and that feels pretty good, because it's Friday. So
yeah, and then as soon as we're done doing this, I'm going to go take a bike ride. So
nice.
There you go. Yeah. It's going to work out really well for everyone. So Andrew, how you been doing? What's going on?
Pretty good. I've been doing the bike rides, and I'm very, very sore, and we'll get into why that is, I think, later in the episode. But
absolutely,
I'm sort of getting better, and so in the last couple of days, I took several days off of the bike because of my, spontaneous interactions with the ground, with
terra firma. Yeah.
Yeah, and I've had several of them in the last week. But
Terra Firma is a bitch.
It really is. It lets you know who is boss. But so I took a few days off the bike, but on Wednesday I did our hill ride that my bike team does, which felt pretty good, especially after taking a couple days off the bike. I nearly broke one of my records on one of the bigger hill climbs in the cities.
Thank God you said one of the records. Like, what did you nearly break now?
Yeah, no. And so that felt pretty good, just because it's interesting how when you take a few days off, sometimes you don't necessarily feel it, but you can kind of see it in your times when you're doing, hill climbs and that sort of stuff. So, so I'm starting to feel better, which is good, and my bikes are working, which is also good. And the one thing that I'm not entirely prepared for, honestly, is the fact that we went from, like 86 degrees last week to 60 degrees, 55 degrees today.
I was going to say like 45 this morning.
Yeah, right. So that's been a bit of a shock, and my last couple of commutes into work have been fairly brisk, and my hands were freezing, and I was looking at them, and they're sort of shriveled and gray, and I'm like, I know they make something for this, but I don't know what it is. And
it's called gloves.
Exactly. And so I think I'll actually have to be breaking those things out soon, which is a little disturbing. I mean, I normally welcome the fall weather, but this was
most
abrupt.
people in Minnesota do. They love the fall weather.
It's fairly abrupt. But yeah,
this was quick shift.
What have you been up to?
Not much. I've been recovering from an injury that we will discuss, I guess, a little bit later when we discuss our main topics. But mainly just getting around. My bike riding also this week has been very limited because of said injuries. And we will discuss that a little later as to why these injuries happened and what I learned about doing a long fat bike ride on platform pedals. So we'll see about that.
Nice.
But more importantly than any of that other stuff that we're going to talk about is that, one, we really appreciate it when you guys send in emails.
True.
We really love it. So if you send your emails to supernumber1cast@gmail.com, we'd really appreciate it. Anything you want to talk about, you can criticisms, compliments, topics you want us to talk about, anything like that. We'd love to hear it. Also, make sure you send us tweets. Send it over to supernumber1 at Twitter, and we'll read them. We'll read them on the show. We like to see what you guys have to say. Also on Facebook.
Absolutely.
If you are following us on Facebook, Andrew and I both see all those comments that show up, and we try to respond to them appropriately as quickly as possible. So yeah, please interact with us on that way. It gives us lots of ideas for show topics.
Indeed.
So, Andrew, go ahead.
I was going to say, but perhaps also more important than anything we're going to talk about, in this episode is what could be more important than talking about what we're currently drinking right now.
Oh, yeah.
This week in alcohol.
So, Kevin, since yours is a very high ABV beer and your time with us is short, perhaps you should discuss what you're drinking first.
All right, I will. So what I am drinking this week is something that is honestly right now probably my favorite beer, hands down. And it is from Oskar Blues Brewery, which I talked about last time. But this is the Gubna Imperial IPA. And let's see if I can show it. Yeah, it's backwards. But so the Gubna, Gubna. It is an Imperial IPA. It is absolutely, in my opinion, not an Imperial IPA. Just because it is a very odd flavored beer. Normally when I have an Imperial IPA, I expect to have a ton of hops that are basically just kicking me in the face of bitterness. I want lots of citrus, lots of like bitter flavors, like those weird, there's like all sorts of weird hops now that are like I'm not normally familiar with.
Right.
Like this one that I had never heard of, Andrew. I don't know if you heard of it, like Mosaic.
Mm-hmm.
You ever had that one?
I've had that one, yeah.
Yeah, and it tastes like mango. It's weird,
Mm-hmm.
right? Okay, but that's what I kind of expect. Like Mosaic, Cascade, Centennial, Amarillo, like all that type of hop. I expect that. So then you get this one, and nothing like it. Not at all. In fact, I don't even know if they put the IBU on this. I don't think it matters because it doesn't taste like it. I mean, what this basically tastes like to me is like a very rich and thick regular beer.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm trying to put this in like the nicest way possible. So they say Imperial IPA, and I'm sure it is technically on the scale of how many IBUs they had to use to balance the amount of malt to get it to 10 ABV.
Sure.
Which is what it is. I mean, this is a very strong beer. Okay. So you smell it when you open it, and you do smell a lot of hop, but there's also a lot of malt sweetness in it as well. And it's not citrusy hop. It's more of that nugget type hop, like almost you'd get in a stout.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not quite like that, but that on that key in that direction.
Yeah, and Beer Advocate here is saying it's 100 plus IBUs.
Yeah, and it does not taste bitter at all. It tastes malty. I absolutely love this beer. I mean, there's bitterness in it because you can feel it in your mouth after you finish swallowing. There's a lot of dryness on your tongue. There's a lot of bitterness in it, but it does not have the typical IPA stuff that I get actually, honestly, really tired of.
Right.
In an IPA. So this is kind of like a breath of fresh air in the IPA scene, in my opinion. Big fan of this one. Also, cold or warm. I've had this one on a couple bikepacking trip things, where I go out for, a day, and I've taken this one with. And warm or cold, this one is still very drinkable. And honestly, the flavor profile doesn't change that much, and that's odd. Normally you have an IPA and it's warm. It's like, wow, that's not even the same thing I had when it was cold. This is actually very similar either way. It also says disestablishmentarian on the top, and that is awesome. So it's a very long word. I'm sure there's a lot of people who would disagree with me about the hop profile on this, but honestly, I just don't get a lot of IPA. Let me take that back. Typical IPA profile out of it. I get a lot of malt, and I'm a big fan of it. I think this is a great beer. I don't know what Beer Advocate and Rate Beer. I've never looked at what they give it.
86 on Beer Advocate.
Okay, I would give it like a 90.
Okay.
I really like it. It's not classic for an IPA style by any means, but it's very tasty. So
nice. I'm gonna have to try that one out because I've seen it several times and just haven't grabbed it. Mainly because it was 10%, but I'll have to grab it.
That's why I grab it. 10%. Yeah, all right, let's get there.
Exactly.
I'm all about like short lines to the goal.
Right. Let's be efficient here.
That's right. But
nice.
You have something that has like intrinsic details that I love.
It does. And so, riding home today and it's, like 50 something degrees out, or maybe we even got to 60. Who knows? But lately I've been doing nothing but session IPAs, pale ales, that kind of stuff, because it's still summerish. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I've been enjoying them. And actually, we'll talk about the Ranger IPA, which was a big downfall for me the other day. But we'll get to that when we talk about the biking. And so today, riding home, knowing that we're going to be podcasting and knowing that I didn't have any beer in the house, I went to a local store here and picked up a couple of different beers, but the one that really kind of caught my eye, and thinking that it's cold weather now, is I need a stout, I need a porter, I need something like that, and I wanted to go with something different than I normally maybe would grab. Thinking like, oh, maybe I'll pick, not a porter, but something like Surly Overrated, a nice IPA, but it's like, no, it's too cold for that. I want something. Yep. Cold weather feeling, and so of course gravitating.
So then you start thinking like maybe I'll have a Surly Bender or a Coffee Bender, which is out now again. But at the same time, those are like, nah.
They're not really a stout or porter. They're sort of an in between. They're brown, and they're good. But I wanted something, as this can puts it, robust. And
there you go. Yeah.
So what I chose was a beer that is completely new to me. I have never had it, and it is Tall Grass Brewing's Zombie Monkey. And they describe it as both a robust porter and also an apocalyptic porter. And it's got, very 28 Days Later sort of graphics kind of stuff on the can. And most interestingly, perhaps, is the can, when you pick it up, when I first took it out of the cooler at the the beer store, it didn't feel cold to me, and that is because it's got texture on the can, which it's not just any texture. It is tactical grip.
That's right.
As the can says,
fantastic.
to prevent slippage while fleeing.
Yes.
And
oh man.
But so the other stats on it are it's 35 IBUs, 6.2% alcohol.
I love that beer.
It's really good, and it's described as a porter. And when I think of porters, usually I kind of think of something sort of like a Guinness draft, just something kind of.
It's like a stout, but a little sourer.
Sour, and also in a lot of oftentimes more watery. Just kind of a thin sort of mouthfeel. Whereas this is not. I would almost go describe this more as a stout because it's got a nice bubbly characteristic in your mouth. The malts are kind of roasty toasty and chocolate and coffee. Just much more bitter profile, and it's not smooth like a porter typically is, where it's just sort of this watery kind of dark liquid.
It's like a double porter almost.
Yeah, it really is. It's it's not that high alcohol. It's 6%.
Yeah, if that was actually a thing, double porter, but it's not.
But I'm super happy I picked this one because it is exactly the kind of beer I'm looking for on a kind of a cool fall day. And it's really good. Check it out. Beer Advocate only gives it. That's a silly thing to say. Beer Advocate gives it an 89, and I think that's pretty much in line. I would give it probably like a 91 or 92 or something because it's good. I'll probably be getting this a lot more. And it comes in cans, which is a great thing for biking.
Tactical grip cans.
And tactical grip cans, so you will not drop it while biking, which is an important thing to not do. So highly recommend it. It's going to be great for fall drinking and fall biking. So check it out.
I honestly think that is one of the better porters that I've had in a long time. It's very good, and also just like it's innovative marketing. So I like it.
It is, and it's like I normally gravitate towards stouts just because I like the flavor profile more of a stout, just a little more bitter, a little more bite in the flavor.
I want more of the coffee flavor.
Exactly, but this has that, so check it out for sure.
So, Andrew, before we go into our big news, our big topics of the week, I think we do need to talk about your recent trip to the river bottoms in Minneapolis.
Well, it's sort of all wrapped into one, honestly.
Is it? Okay, all right. Well, then you decide. Do you want to go first? Shall I go first? Shall you go first? I'll go, then you go? I don't.
Why don't you go, and then we'll just see what happens.
Okay. Well, I don't have much to say.
Okay.
So, my weeks of biking here have been really. Let's see. How do I say this? I wanted to say my first word was lackluster, but that's not true. It's like I've had good rides. They just haven't been like I'm gonna break myself rides. They've been very like let's go for a bike ride and just let's ride my bike. So first thing here. So a week ago, Saturday, me and a buddy of mine, James, we went out and I convinced him to ride fat bike with me for a long way. Initially, our plan was to ride from the Rochester area all the way up to Red Wing and back. So it would have been about a 100-mile day. We were going to go up to there. Apparently, there's a brewery in Red Wing. We were going to go up there and visit that and then come back down. We got about 25 miles in, and it became very apparent that not going to happen for me. Not going to happen. Reason being is that I had spent the entire week up to this doing CrossFit. So I've been going every day, doing new squats and new techniques that I'm not used to, basically working all the muscles that cycling doesn't work.
Sure.
And it broke me pretty bad. So get on the bike Saturday, and I ride the 10 miles into town to meet James, and everything's fine. I'm like, this will be great. I'm also riding just platform pedals. I'm not riding clipless because I'm trying to get into shape or in the form and used to what winter cycling is going to be like, where I have boots. And so just getting okay, I want my quads to be used to just pushing all the time and the hams not being so used to pulling and that whole thing. So I'm trying to get into that form. So the 10 miles into town, no problem. Good times, good fun. Get into town, take off from there. I think we get about 10 miles from there, and I already just can tell, like, this is not good, because I can pedal just fine, but there's absolutely, like, zilch explosive power. Nothing. For hills, like, I'd come to a hill, and it'd be like, 1, 2, 3, 4, oh, shift down, spins all the way to the top, like super low spinning. Like James is a single speed. He rides single speed almost exclusively. Like he did 252 miles on a single speed in one day, which is crazy. The guy's a beast. And he's going up his hills on his fat bike, and he's just right up it. And I'm just like, I'll see you tomorrow. Bye. And so I'm riding up the hill, and I'm doing the best I can, and I can keep going. There's just no explosive power in my legs at all. And I can keep spinning there, but that's all there is. It's the only thing that's in my legs right now. I feel like wood. They feel like just appendages that you can tell to move, but there's no feeling in them. So I can pedal for a long time. It's not going to be fast. So we come down to the spots that James had picked up, that we can have stops. It's just really cool spot. There's a river and a bridge, and like there's a sandbar down there where you can go and ride your bike if you want to do it. So we stand out there and we take like a 10-15 minute break. And like Red Wing ain't happening, dude. It's not happening to me. I mean, it's just it's not going to happen. I just don't have it in my legs to do it today. Because when you get into Red Wing, that gets into like serious bluff country and not just rollers like what we were doing. I mean, there was like maybe 2 big hills on the entire day that we did, and we did like 60 miles, and those hills are just brutal on me. So he's like, "Oh, it's no problem." So we went and we had lunch and we finished the day out just riding gravel and doing the stuff, and it was fun. It was like a great time. I loved it. But it did teach me a couple of things. So one is that CrossFit took way more out of me than I thought it was going to, because just the muscle groups that it was working were muscle groups that cycling does not work.
They're the muscle groups you don't need. Superfluous.
Yes no.
Superfluous.
Yes and no. But here's where we're getting into the more important part about the muscle groups that you don't use. And so did that ride. Sunday, I went into CrossFit, and it's kind of just an open gym day for 2 hours. And I went into CrossFit, and I learned how to do handstands, which is pretty great. I've never done them before in my entire life, so I was like, "Oh my god, this is great!" I was like, "Oh my god, I'm a fucking gymnast," but I'm not. But it was against a wall. It wasn't, But yeah, it's something I've never done, so I was pretty happy about it. But then the next day, go into the CrossFit again to do the WOD. The workout of the day.
More dots.
I know. I don't like calling it the WOD. I think it sounds dumb, but anyway. So go in there, and I'm going to tell you guys what this workout was, and then you can just kind of extrapolate what the result was. So the workout was, you go in there, you do some stretching, you do your warm-up, and then there was a bunch of squats. And the squats, for me, they haven't quite worked out what my 1 rep maximum is yet. So kind of what we're going on right now is like 155, 160 pound back squat, 145, 150 pound front squat. I can do more than that, but that's kind of just what we're going on because we don't know what my real maximum is right now. And so there was like a progression that you do, and it was like 8 reps of this, 8 reps of that, blah, 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 blah. So it was like a good half an hour of squats before this workout. So I did all my squats, and really I didn't have any problem. I didn't have any point where I was doing the squats and I'm like, oh, can't get up. It was, maybe one moment of hesitation, and then you just kind of like turn on the burners and get through it.
Right.
So no problem. Do all my squats, do my stretching, and then we get into this workout part. So the workout part for this was, you look at it and you're like, oh, this shouldn't be so bad. And then you start, then you do one of these and you realize, oh, yeah, that's brutal. So the workout was, I don't know, Andrew, what's the last time you did a lot of like jumping rope?
Well, sort of never, but also at the same time when in yoga, when we're doing cardio stuff, we jump rope without jumping rope. So,
Yeah,
which
that's
is
not
always
jumping
hilarious
rope,
to me because
yeah.
they're like, let's do cardio. And I was like, you guys call this cardio?
Yeah, it's not cardio.
You don't know cardio.
But also like jumping rope, which I also did in the previous gym, where you jump rope without jumping rope, is not jumping rope.
No, yeah. So the last time I
you don't get
did
the coordination at
actual
all.
jumping rope was probably like 6th grade PE.
Yep. Exactly. Okay. So the last time
just
I
the
did,
sensation of getting whipped in the shins with a rope
it's awful. Yeah.
It's something else. Yeah.
So the last time that I did like serious jumping rope was like probably 5th grade, and there was a thing called like jump for reading or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
And so what it was is like
Which
you
makes no
actually like
sense.
after school you did jump rope, and you got people to sponsor you for how many times you would jump rope.
Mhm.
And it didn't have to be all in a row. You just had to do so many before whatever.
Right.
And so like that's the last time that I seriously like I'm gonna jump rope for a long time. Okay. So this one was 200 single unders, or you could do 100 double unders. Now, I don't know if you ever try to do double unders, but I can't do them.
Takes some work, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's like one of those things
once you learn
that
how
I
to
could
do them,
like one every once in a while, but not like in a row,
Yeah, and all these people around me are doing like, they just do it because they've practiced them. And, so I'm like, well, I'm relegated to doing the 200 single unders. So do that. So 200 single unders. Then what you do is you pick up this 20-pound medicine ball, and you go and you run for 400 meters. I think it was 400 meters. So you go run with it on your shoulder. Either shoulder, doesn't matter. You can move it around however you want, but you have to carry it. Running with 20 pounds sucks. It's not very fun. So you go and run that, and then you come back in, and then you do 30 kettlebell swings,
Mm-hmm.
which with 53 pounds for men, 35 pounds for women. I should have done the 35. 53 is very heavy.
Yeah.
Especially because I wasn't doing them correctly. But anyway, so
sounds like I would hurt myself doing that, I think.
Yeah, so you do 30 of those, drop that, and then you go over and you do 20 wall balls, which is where you take that 20-pound medicine ball and you throw it up to a target 10 feet in the air. And every time you throw it up, you catch it and you go down into a full squat and then back up and throw it again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's very taxing. And then once you do that, you go basically through that entire thing again, but backwards. So everything that you did the first time, you're doing it again on the way back, and then you end with jump ropes again. So I get through the first half of it, and I'm still way behind everyone else who's working out with me, but I expect it because I'm new at this, and so I'm like, no big deal, I'm still working, I'm sweating like crazy, and I'm breathing hard, and I'm like, well, it's fine. So I finally get to the last set of the kettlebell swings, and I'm swinging them, and it is just brutal on me. It's just really hard. So when you do a kettlebell swing, if you don't know, you take this weight and you hold it between your knees, and you swing it, kind of doing a pelvic thrust almost,
Mm-hmm.
and you swing it up to like your shoulder height, and then back down, and then you thrust again and get it back up and then down, and you do 30 of those. And I finished that, and I was having I finished it, but I was not able to finish it unbroken. I had to take 2 breaks while I was doing it. Then I picked up my medicine ball, went out and ran, and I was walking some of the run because I'm just like, God, I'm so tired. I could catch my breath. That wasn't the problem. It's just the muscles were just like, we got nothing. This is where I'm realizing that cycling, the cycling style that I do, let me make that very clear, doesn't rely on a lot of explosive energy.
Mm-hmm.
I do a lot of long distance, just stay steady, not burst and explode.
Need some intervals in your life.
Yeah, exactly. So moving out there, I'm doing my walk/run on the way back, and I come back in and I do my jump ropes. And my jump ropes, everyone is there watching me do jump ropes because this is the CrossFit way of, everyone cheers on basically the last person to finish. Which is part of me is like, that's really cool. It's cool. Like, you don't feel bad for being the last guy,
right?
Or for being the last person to finish, because everybody is there and
right.
They want you to finish. They don't care how long it takes. It's the fact that you finish. Like, the time is just kind of a thing for you. It doesn't matter to anyone else. It's that sort of thing. So that's very motivating. Now, at the same time, like I'm jumping rope and I'm doing like maybe 15 to 25 at a time, you know, and I get to like there's 104 left, and I stop, and my wife Leisha goes, how many left? And I'm like, 104. And she's like, come on, you can do it. And then everybody, I'm like, all right, you know, and I kind of just barrel my way through it. You know, basically just like 5 to 10 to 15 at a time. If I get 15 in a row, I'm like, oh my God, I'm a champion. So, you know, but I get to the last one, and the last one hits, and I throw the rope down, and I'm like, oh, and everyone's like, yay, good job, you know. I'm like, oh, this is great. You know, everyone did a good job. You know, it really feels good to finish. It was like, oh, this is great. I like doing this. So then my wife, after like a good 5-minute cool down of just kind of standing around going, oh, you know, she goes, all right, let's go take a cool down run. And I'm like, have you lost your mind?
Yeah, those words don't go together, by the way.
What? She's like, no, you'll feel so much better. It's only like 800 meters. We'll just go very slow pace, and you're front. I'm like, all right. I make it 3 steps out of the gym area, and I go, nope. Now, what happened was my IT band on my right leg all of a sudden just decided to go, no, we're not doing this anymore. And it just tightened up and went like nope, not happening. So when my 3rd step like hit the ground, my leg just went and basically like shortened up 2 inches and said like, nope, not doing this. And I'm like, I stopped, and I'm like, nope, not happening.
Walking around like, yes, master, yes.
Yeah, exactly. And I walk around, and I go back into the gym, and I get like the foam rollers and all the, you know, mobility stuff out, and I start rolling it out. And I'm like, well, you know, it's bound to happen. I did a ton of jump roping that I'm not used to doing. My calves are tight as crazy. You know, like they're crazy tight. I just need to roll out my legs, my IT bands, my hip flexors, like all this out, and I'll be okay. So I do all of that. Get home that night, still rolling out, because I'm like, I do not want to be in pain. So I keep rolling everything out. Wake up the next morning, and I cannot get out of bed. Like literally, like to even sit up is so painful that it took me about 45 minutes to get up out of bed, because I had to like push I could not move my pelvis at all, because if I flexed my right hip flexor or my left hip flexor, it was just like searing, shooting pain. And I'm like, awesome. That's great. So I actually had to call into work that day and say, I can't come into work. I can't put on my own pants barely, let alone tie my shoes, let alone come in and do things at a golf course. So I'm like, I can't come into work. So I spent the day just like rolling and recovering. And when I say rolling, it's like spend an hour getting down onto the floor.
I was going to say, like, sort of like slink your way down your stairs, you know.
It was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. And what it all came down to, really, when I started analyzing, like, you know, what would cause this to happen, is that when I was doing those kettlebell swings, I was letting my shoulders and my back slump forward. And when that happened, it just basically, all your midsection form just goes to pot, and that screwed up all of my lower body as well, and, you know, whatever.
Sure.
And that's what happens when you get tired. You know, it's like your form just starts to go.
Your form goes away, right.
Yeah. So that's what happened. It wasn't CrossFit. It was just me getting tired, and then like just not paying attention to keep your shoulders back, keep your back tight, you know, like when you're doing these motions. So anyway, today is the first day since Tuesday that I have been able to walk around relatively unfettered. I put on my shoes this morning and tied them when I didn't even cry once. It was pretty great. So it was pretty awesome.
I understand that.
I went to the gym yesterday just to use their stretching equipment and their mobility stuff. And the trainer's like, "How you feeling there, sunshine?" You know, and I'm like, I'm not feeling so good. I kind of screwed up when I did this other thing. And he's like, "Yeah, that'll happen. Well, you know, roll it out." You know, and it wasn't like a serious like oh my God, I got so seriously hurt is like damaging. No, it was a matter like, yeah, you're an idiot. You tried to do more weight than you were ready for. 1, 2, you got tired and your form suffered.
Right.
And 3, you didn't do the right stuff at the right time. That sort of thing. Like honestly, the precursor to all of this was doing a 60-mile bike ride with clipless pedals after a week of CrossFit. Like my muscles were just tired.
Right.
I was overtraining to an extent that the next time I pushed myself hard, my muscles just said, you know what, screw you, we're done. And they just wouldn't support the weight anymore, and that ended up being what happened.
Well, I mean,
so,
but at the same time, you should maybe, take a page out of Jens Voigt's book and...
Shut up, buddy, and do what I tell you.
Oh, I love the Jens Voigt soundboard.
But the thing is, I totally tried to do that, and the thing is, my body said, like, oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Listen to this.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and it basically said, like, you think so? Well, listen to this one, so... like, I was down with it. I was totally, like... I actually texted my wife on Wednesday saying, like, what's the workout today? Because if it's something upper body, I'm going to try and do it.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, it's all running and rowing. And I'm like, nope. Not happening. Like, I would try and do some of the light rowing, but the running is not going to happen because I tried doing that around the golf course. I'm like, I'll just go run over to here and there, and I got like about 8 steps, and nope, not happening. Before the back just goes like, did you learn nothing? Let us recover. Come on. So yeah, that's been my week in exercising and cycling. Is that I'm learning a lot about how cycling is a wonderful aerobic sport if you do it casually, like I generally do. But at the same time, like we as casual cyclists really have to be careful about cross training and working on our stabilizing muscles, especially if you use platform pedals, because I think that's really what did it, is that you get into your the outside, not your glutes, not your quads, not your hams, but those muscles that are on the sides of your hips that connect also to your like IT bands and like go up in there. I can't remember what they're called exactly, like medius, whatever, but they're the side muscles. They're almost connected to your obliques. In your abs.
Sure.
Those are the muscles that get kind of ignored in cycling, especially as a casual cyclist. And so I think it's actually worth for a casual cyclist like myself to go through and find stretches and different exercises that you can do, like maybe even 3 times a week, that aren't like super heavy, like weight things, but just something to strengthen those muscles, like side steps.
Right.
There's other exercises. I can't remember the names of them now, like shift steps and things like that. But just something to strengthen the muscles that you don't normally use in your cycling pedal stroke. Because there are a lot of muscles in your pedal stroke that aren't commonly used, but when you have to use them, like in winter cycling, when you're on a platform pedal, or when you're doing something that's off the bike, it's very easy to hurt yourself because your quads and your hams are so strong.
Yeah, and you're unbalanced.
You have a muscle imbalance. Yeah.
Well, and that is why I mean there's really sort of no comparison between before and after when I started doing yoga and after I started doing yoga, because when I started getting serious into cycling, I basically started yoga pretty quickly right after that. But that has helped. I would estimate so much in both my cycling form and also just my general level of fitness too, just because the place that I go to is a core power yoga studio, and so it's more than just sort of the standard yoga stuff. One of the things that I do is also yoga with weights, and so it's a lot of the postures, but also with weights involved, and so it's
stabilizing muscles.
It's stabilizing muscles.
Really,
I mean, it's core power, and that's why they call it that. The studio, that it's all about developing core strength, and that's really if you read anything about like cycling, what you can do for cross training, it's all about sort of working on your core, and because a lot of the problems that people have with uncomfort or discomfort during riding, it's like numb hands and that sort of stuff. So much of that comes from the fact that you have no core strength sort of holding you up, and because you really shouldn't be putting all kinds of pressure on your hands. Your core should be basically supporting you. And like when I'm riding my road bike, and of course Bike Fit has something to do with this too, but I put some pressure on my hands, but by and large, my arms are sort of relaxing on the handlebars to a certain extent. And of course, you hit a bump, then you're going to feel shock in your hands. It's going to hurt and that sort of stuff. Yeah. But by and large, I'm largely relaxed there. And yoga sort of taught me too to like sort of relax my shoulders, so I'm not hunched up, and those things help a lot. And for me, what's been great about the yoga thing is, I don't really have a ton of upper body strength. I have some. I used to have a lot more when I was rock climbing actively and that sort of stuff. But it gives me the kind of upper body strength that I want. It's a fitness, it's a tone, it's a functional, muscle such that I'm, fit, but I'm not training those muscles for like lifting, heavy shit basically. So it's not strength, it's strength training but without the strength training, and it's been very beneficial just for general fitness and also for bike riding. So, and the other thing too is, last February I went to a PT guy for knee problems and stuff, and it largely was an overuse injury, and I just had to step back from it. But going to the PT was paid for by and large through health insurance, so it was useful from that aspect. But he gave me sort of a regiment of exercises to do just based on my I have flat feet, and therefore my anatomy is a little goofy and it's a little hard on my knees, and he basically gave me this list of exercises to do that would help strengthen the muscles that I'm not using generally during my pedal stroke, such that when I do my pedal stroke, my knees are much more in line and going straight up and down rather than sort of, working their way out and that sort of stuff. So anything you can do to sort of complement the things you're going to be doing on the bike is generally a pretty good thing. So, oops, I think I lost you. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, we had some weird drop off there.
Yeah, let me see if I can get the video back.
It might have been me.
There's the video. Okay.
Okay. Okay, Coco, that is quite enough. I have a dog who is just rolling on the floor moaning, so that's different.
Hot.
Yeah. Whoa. What were we saying right before we lost the video?
Anything you can do
talking
to
about
sort
knees. Okay.
To sort of help your body.
Yeah. But you were talking about how your knees were more in line, straight up and down, and that was the thing that I actually found out through doing this CrossFit stuff, is that there's a cyclist knee and then there is like a weightlifter knee.
Right.
The cyclist knee wants to stay straight up and down. The weightlifter knee, they want it to come outside. So that is something I'm fighting against while I'm trying to lift weights in like a squat. It's like, they don't want your knees straight up and down because that's not good.
Sure.
When you put serious weight on your knees, it's not great. That's where I'm actually discovering these muscles that, like, wow, I don't have a lot of strength in those muscles. Like, if I try to squat in a cyclist way, in my mind anyway, and just like straight up and down, I can squat easy, like way more than I can if I do it with the right form.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a matter of like, those muscles are strong. That's those muscles can take a lot of weight,
right,
or a lot of repetitions or whatever it is. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that's good. I mean, it's good to be strong, but it's also not good to ignore the other muscles in your legs.
No, absolutely, right.
So that's the only thing that I can say about like the whole CrossFit, cross-training, cyclist thing, is that I am beginning to see like the real true benefit in branching out your training regimen outside of the bike. Like I love to ride my bike, and for a long time I thought that like the bike was going to be my only. Are you serious, dogs? If I have to kick you out of here, I'm gonna... Wow, like it's like some kind of anyway. Like I'm seeing the real benefit.
Don't they know we're on the air?
Yeah, don't they? Come on. I'm seeing the real benefit of like branching out and saying like, you know what, like I thought for a while that cycling was going to be my exercise and this is going to keep me fit, this is going to keep me thin, and can it do 75% of those things? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Can it do all of those things? No.
Right.
It's very important to branch out and to do more things that are outside of your comfort zone. Cycling is very much in my comfort zone right now. And when I say cycling, it's not like competitive cycling, but it's like, yes, I can ride a bike for a long time. That's fine. But at the same time, as studies have shown, if you want to look it up, I'm not going to go into the different stuff that I've read about. But, a long time of cycling, like if you bike for 8 hours, is less calorie and fat burn than maybe 45 minutes of pushing really hard.
Sure.
So that is the thing that we all have to kind of deal with, is that to stay comfortable is not necessarily a fitness goal. It's, if you can cycle comfortably for a long time, that's awesome. But it doesn't necessarily mean you're fit.
Right.
So,
and the other thing too is that even if you don't change your cycling volume, I think that doing something other than cycling, or rather in addition to cycling for fitness, sort of helps you avoid burnout. Because a lot of burnout in cycling, my experience in this, of course, is very limited basically to, now a full year of active, heavy training, maybe a little bit more. But I never really have once felt burnt out on cycling, whereas I hear some people just kind of get just completely fried. They don't want to even get on the bike. And maybe I'll have 1 or 2 days of that where I go, okay, I need to take a few days off because I'm feeling tired mentally and physically, and I just can't do it right now. But having an extra venue for exercise, sort of you maintain your exercise level, which is good. But B, it just sort of keeps biking fun. And
it's like a mental recharge, really.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm fully on board with that. So whatever your flavor is, that's up to you. But it's worth it.
I would just challenge people to go outside of biking and do something that is not dogs humping each other. Come on, I let you in this once.
Unless you're into that thing.
Come on. The first time I let them in while we're recording, what do? They make asses of themselves. I'm so glad that you can't see them.
Cropped video. I can see them.
It's disgusting. Okay, but anyway, I would challenge all of you cyclists out there. We all love cycling. That's why we listen to this podcast and why we make it. It's like cycling is really fun. But I would challenge you to get outside of your comfort zone and do one other exercise at least that may be just a tinge outside of your comfort zone. Just to, one, it's going to help your training, and two, it's going to help you mentally to, keep the bike fun and keep it fresh and that sort of thing. So we will see how it goes in this next couple weeks here while I'm on the bike again. We're getting into the fall weather. We're entering fat bike territory, so I'm pretty happy about that.
Right.
And get back on there, and we'll see how CrossFitting and cycling can work together to make a stronger Kevin. We'll see how that goes. But Andrew, you have had another epic adventure.
I've had several actually, and so the last time we recorded, we were sort of giving a recap of my road racing season, and since then, I've been doing a lot of different things, including started cyclocross racing, and I've done a gravel ride, and I've done another race, and so we'll kind of cover all those things. But so one of the fun things that now that road season is over is sort of that stress level has kind of diminished a little bit, and I've been doing more stuff that is just kind of fun on the bike. Some of it is included racing, but it's just like it's just a different sort of.
It's a different vibe.
It's a different headspace. Yeah, I'm just not worried about my performance as much on the road, and I'm still doing almost as much, probably just as much volume. But it just feels different because I'm not worried about next week's race. And even with cyclocross, I stress out a little bit about that, but so far I just don't care as much. And I'm not sure if that'll carry over to the entire season and in how I treat cyclocross as a whole, but we'll see. So far I just don't feel the same way as I do about road. And one of that too is just the expectations I have. I developed high expectations for the road season, and those haven't really carried over quite as much into the cyclocross season yet. And
cyclocross is a different animal for you.
It's a different animal, and if things start going well, that will probably change. And then I'll have high expectations for that. But for now, I'm maybe 25% less concerned about it as I was with road season. So
now it's all whiskey hand ups and
right, exactly. But so the first thing that I did, post road season, and if you guys live in the sort of the Midwest area at this time of year, next year, one of the things I highly suggest you check out is the Stay Classy Classic, which is a road race. Very casually use that term. Put on by a local guy known as the Minneapolis Musette, also known as Aaron Smith. He took over the reins from a guy named Spencer Howe this year, and it's the second edition of it. And what it is, it's so much fun. It's a 100-mile road race, team time trial even, from Minneapolis, or rather St. Paul to Red Wing, Minnesota, and back to St. Paul. And the rules are basically this. You have to have a team of 5 people. And if you have less than that, that's fine. If you have more than that, you are automatically disqualified, like one team was this year. But the point is it doesn't really matter because it's a ride for fun. And there's no prizes. There's no entry fee. You're just out there having a good time. And there's winners, there's losers, but who cares because it's just a ride.
You're riding for cycling.
Exactly. And so I organized a team with amongst my bike team, and I just said when I first heard that this was going to be happening for a second year, because I knew it happened last year and I was out of town at the time and I missed it, and I was kind of bummed about that. But I wanted to organize a team to do this, and I knew that it was going to be 100 miles, and I said, okay guys, here's my goal. I want to do this with about a 20-mile-an-hour average. If possible, because I didn't know if there's going to be some sort of rules or what the terrain was going to be like and that sort of stuff. So if we can do it, here's the pace I would like to maintain. So who's in? And I got 4 other people on my team interested in doing it. And we named ourselves the Rad List, which is a combination of Radler, which is both a drink but also a German word for cyclist. And so why be Radler when you can be the Rad List? And so it's radder than Rad List. So radder than Radler. So anyway, that was our team name. And
Radliest, actually.
Exactly. And so we had there were I think 7 other teams, but so we don't really know what we were getting into when we signed up for this, because Aaron, Minneapolis Musette, he's sort of got.
He's pretty vague about it.
He's vague and he's got a devious mind, and so I heard that he was going to like Costco ahead of time, and I'm like, oh man, we're gonna have to like haul a 6-gallon jug of mayo with us or something like that. Like stuff it down our jerseys, and we're gonna have to like swap it between people and all that sort of stuff. So I was a little concerned about what this race might entail.
You're gonna have to carry another man's cream.
Exactly. But so it turned out that the rules of the race. It was pretty fun. We met up in Mounds View Park in St. Paul, and there he handed out our cue sheets for what the route was going to be, and there's a team leader, and so he hands out one set of cue sheets to the team leader, and the rules were this: there were 3 checkpoints. You had to stop at those checkpoints and take a picture of yourself, of your team. The team leader had to snap a picture of the team, post it to Twitter with a timestamp of where you were, and we had an unofficial official sponsor, which was the Pearson Nut Roll. Which, if you've never had a Pearson's Nut Roll, it's I would say one of the maybe the premier ultimate cycling food for cyclists. It's excellent, yeah. Yeah, it's very good. It's peanuts. It's got like a candy or like a sugar nougat center thing, and laced with caramel. It's got all the food groups there for cycling, and so that was our unofficial official sponsor. And so in the picture we had to snap a picture of the Pearson's Nut Roll. And in addition to posting the picture on Twitter, the other rule was that we had to buy something at the checkpoint. And so the checkpoints included, the first one was a gas station, the second one was a bakery that ended up being closed, so you had to go to another place nearby. And the third place was a Dunn Brothers. And you had to save your receipts of your purchase from that place because that also provided a secondary timestamp. So that was basically the only set of rules for the thing, and so that's pretty easy. That's not such a big deal.
Yeah.
So we meet up at the starting line, and we're sort of staggered by every few minutes. There were 7 teams. One was automatically disqualified because there were 7 of them. And we were the last team to set off. And all I really need to say about it is that it was just a fantastic course. We started in St. Paul. We crossed over into Wisconsin. There were so many hill climbs several hill climbs in this whole ride, and Aaron, the organizer, overheard me apparently saying as we're passing him, because he was driving with his mom in the car taking pictures as we were going along the course, and we're coming up this climb, and he apparently overheard me saying, like, God, this climb is awesome. I love this. And that really, like, every single climb we came across, it's just like, this is the most fun climb I've had in a long time. And it was just these long, gradual climbs out of like the river valley, because we're hovering around the Mississippi the entire time. And they were just fun. I mean, there was nothing super steep, and so it was just these long, 4 or 5% grade for a mile or something like that, and just great terrain. And it was just
Taxers, yeah.
Yeah, it was such a good ride, and it was fun. And he, sprinkled a little gravel in there as a little shocker to all of us, because we weren't expecting it, and one guy in my group too, especially, he like refuses to ride on gravel, so he's like, "What is this?" It's
what?
Just, well, you
refuses to ride on gravel.
Don't want to dirty your road bike or your white shoes, because that's not pro at all. So, so that was a shock for him. But so we
and he would say the same thing to me, as I'm like, "Are you kidding? 18 miles an hour?"
Exactly.
Yeah.
But so
come on, Posey. Yeah.
So we had a lot of fun doing the race. We ended up in second place only because we had 2 flat tires. And I would also maintain too that the first group, the guys that took first, who finished 7 minutes ahead of us, did not recognize the sponsors in their pictures, and therefore I think they're automatically disqualified. So
no nut rolls.
So I think that we actually won. But there was also a the third second element of this game was that he gave us a Cards Against Humanity card at the beginning of the race. Every team got 5 cards, and he pulled the way Cards Against Humanity works. There's a black card, which is the sort of the subject card, and all your white cards you have to match to whatever the black card is. And so he said, whoever picks the funniest one gets 5 hours taken off of their time. And so I never really heard what the end results of that were, but regardless, I think we won. But either way, it was pretty cool, because I think out of the 6 or 7 teams that were riding, only 3 finished. It was a hot day, wow. And it was intense. But the cool part too is that the team who finished ahead of us and my team separated by 7 minutes and over 100 miles. That's impressive. And so it was cool that this is a race that anyone could be in, and they could take 11 hours or whatever. But it was fun that there were 2 teams that were like, okay, let's go guys, let's go, and put some serious sweat into it. So that is sort of a nice introduction, sort of the post-road race season for me. The other big, huge thing, and this happened the day before the State Classic, which is, as you said, it was my foray into the river bottoms in Minnesota. And really, what comes before that is a week prior, I had purchased, I added a bike to my stable of bikes, and I turned 33 at the beginning of August, and great. Can you hear me?
All right.
Okay. I just got a moment of rhythm. So when during my birthday, my wife asked me what I wanted, and I said, well, cyclocross season is coming up, so anything you can contribute towards me figuring out a way to get a cyclocross bike, I'm on board with that. And so she gave me some parameters with the long and short of it is I was able to get a bike, a cyclocross bike, a blue Norcross, which I purchased from my fine friends at Omnium Bike Shop in St. Paul, Minnesota. And I highly recommend, if you're in the area, you check them out because it's one of my favorite shops in the city. There's several good shops.
Bikes too.
Yeah, they have fat bikes too, but there's several great shops in the cities, and Omnium is definitely one of them. But little did they know what they were getting into when they sold me a bicycle, or rather, it doesn't really hurt them much because I pay them. But this bike, as far as I can tell, is cursed. And so anyway, I bought this bike. I did a lot of sort of research. I was looking at used ones. I had a friend who was offering me a free frame. And then I would just have to buy the components and that sort of stuff. And it's like, coming from the road biking scene, I bought a really fancy bike last year. It's been great. I love it. It's been done great things for me. And not that the bike is really the it's not all the bike, obviously, because you can ride any bike with similar amounts of success. But I enjoyed the bike that I have. But when I was going into this new bike, I was like, oh, well, this. And I would shop around, you'd see like, this bike doesn't have great components, blah, 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 and all that sort of stuff. But when it came down to it, I realized that, okay, wait a minute. Here's what I'm buying this bike for. I don't have a e-bike to road bikes. So when the weather's bad, when it's winter riding, I have my motor, but that's not for ride. So I was looking for a bike that I could take out in the winter, not worry about if it got rusty on the chain, and that sort of stuff. I needed a bike that I could beat up a lot, and not so freaked out about it. So I don't need a carbon bike for my first cyclocross bike. I don't need the best components on it because it's cyclocross and I'm probably going to crash and break components. And so having a bike that the components are cheap on is probably not such a bad thing. And so when I came to that realization, I was like, okay, this bike is perfect for me because it's an aluminum bike, so it's great. It's not the lightest thing ever, but it's light enough. It's got SRAM Apex, which, I was reading a review, and they're like, oh, if you can tell the difference between SRAM Apex and SRAM Rival, good luck. Good for you. But, I did a couple test rides, and I rode it, and, feels good to me. It shifts fine. It doesn't make a lot of noise. It shifts cleanly. Perfect. And so I bought this bike.
Rust because it's aluminum.
Right, exactly. And if I break things, then they're going to be relatively cheap to replace. And so that's
right.
Good.
Right.
And it's going to be, not only is it going to be my cyclocross bike, it's going to be my gravel bike, and it's going to be my winter riding bike. So it's going to be three duties right there. It's not my single purpose bike like my road bike is. So much duty. So I was like, okay, this is a sound decision. And little did I know that decision was so sound. And so the first real ride that I took on this bike was along the Mississippi River, there's this thing called the River Bottoms, and I had heard about this place, but I'd never been on it, and so I didn't know quite what to expect.
It's kind of like a mythical mountain bike trail.
It exactly is, yeah.
That somewhat exists in Minneapolis, St. Paul area, but if you don't know where to get onto it, it pretty much might as well not exist.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, so I'd heard about this, a long time ago, but I never really knew where it started. I know of a place where you can get into it, and I had seen on one ride when we were kind of passing through there, lots of fat bikers getting their fat bikes out to go on the river bottoms. But I didn't know anything about it. So I get my new bike, and I find out that one of the local bike shops in town, Angry Catfish, is hosting a Rapha event. And Rapha is this British cycling company. They make clothing and other stuff. But not only do they make clothing, they sort of have this culture behind them where they host these Rapha rides. Uh-oh. You still there? You back?
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay.
That's really annoying. All right. Rapha is a British cycling company.
Yes, who host these Rapha rides, and they have this reputation of sort of being epic rides. If you go on a Rapha ride, be sure it's going to rain, it's going to be muddy, and it's going to be cold, and that sort of stuff.
Right.
And so you just have to expect it to be this epic event, which is good because those are fun. And so this was put on by Angry Catfish Bike Shop and something called Rapha Mobile, which turns out is one of the guys that works for Rapha, or two guys that work for Rapha. They drive this trailer around, a little camper sort of deal, around the country to various bike events. And The trailer has a big like a TV in it and an espresso machine, so they can serve espresso at bike races and that sort of stuff. And but they just go on rides, on local rides. And so this particular ride was down in the river bottoms, and I was like, what? I need more training because I'd already done one cyclocross race. It went pretty well. I was in a field of 101 and I got 13th, which was like, that's pretty good.
That's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, nothing to complain about there. But one of the things that I knew I needed more of is fitness is not my problem. It's bike handling is my problem because I'm not used to, riding a bike and doing sharp turns around posts or trees or whatever on grass and dirt. It's just like when you're a road bike rider, or even really just a bike rider in general, that's just not something you do, And unless you're doing like serious mountain biking, these are skills you don't have. And so I did a little bit of riding around the city to sort of there's some mountain bike trails around town to sort of get a little practice. But this was like for me, it was like, okay, another chance to get some practice. And so signing up for the ride, I had heard like we'd just gotten a bunch of rain and that it was going to be muddy and gross and all that sort of stuff. And it's starting at 6 o'clock at night, and 6 o'clock at night. And so I was like, okay, but bring a light, and they had said as much. And so I tried to bring the one bike light that I had, but it wouldn't fit on my handlebars. I was like, well, that's not going to work. And so I grabbed a headlamp, which I was like, okay, I can rudimentarily strap this on my handlebars and it'll be fine. But like, we're not going to be out there that late. We're going to, go out for an hour or two, and it'll be sunset, but it'll be no big deal. And we'll, we'll be back and we'll go to the bar and we'll have some drinks. And so no big deal. I don't need, like superior lighting to do this sort of stuff. And so we get to the bike shop, or we're in around. There's a bunch of people I recognize. One of my teammates was there, and so he and I were chatting up. And then one of the guys that runs the bike shop says, "Does anyone need a light, to borrow?" And I'm like, "Oh no, I'm good." And I thought about it, like, no, I'll take your light. And so they hooked me up with this really nice rechargeable light that was super bright, strapped to my handlebars. We're good to go.
What was it? A Knight Rider? Or
I don't remember the brand. I'm probably gonna get one though because it was really nice, nice and compact, lightweight, and that sort of stuff. Let's take a quick pee break because I gotta pee.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's take a break, and then I can take my dogs downstairs and get them out of here.
Perfect. Good idea.
All right, let's take a break. Hello.
Hello. Do me a favor. Push off on your video and then on again.
Off on my what?
On your video. Like there's like the mute
gotcha.
video thing.
Yeah.
All right, there we go. Perfect.
All right.
Okay. So, yeah, they hooked me up with a light. And one of the fun things about, or one of the interesting things, rather, was that it had rained a lot before. And, you know, a lot of people were saying, oh, you know, river bottoms, you can't ride a cross bike through there right now. There's just no way. And I had seen a picture of
challenge accepted.
Exactly, someone going through there early in the morning, and their drive shaft was completely just caked with mud. And I was like, oh, this is going to be an adventure, hands down. And so we set out and go over to St. Paul and head down to the river bottoms. So now I know the secret entrance to the river bottoms. Not such a big deal to get into. And right away we hit upon this just puddles and mud and grossness, and you know, it's not long before I'm having to dismount off my bike because you know, it's just like impassable because you get slowed to a stop in the mud and you're just spinning and nothing's happening. So I get off the bike and I'm running along, We started with a group of like, I want to say 20-something people. Several people dropped off right away as soon as we started. It became apparent where we were going because a few people were on slicks, and road bikes, and it's like there's no way you're going to survive in here. And as we kept going, the herd kept thinning, and one of the guys that I know from when I first started riding with Birchwood, his name is Logan. He was on the ride too, and he took a really gnarly crash very early on, apparently, and had this huge gash in his side, and so he bailed and went back to Angry Catfish and started drinking beer, which is a smart thing to do.
Yeah, good idea.
And so, so we're going along, and already it's a lot of fun because we're just barreling through this mud stuff and having to hop over pipes and hop over tree roots. And you just have to plow through mud as it comes, and just like it's one of those things. You're just like you see a person in front of you go through it. It looks gnarly, and you're just like, well, here I go. And you just kind of wiggle your way through it, and just let the bike sort of wobble as you go, and it ends up working out. One place where it did not work out, and here's the beginning of the bike curse for me. The brand new bike is we get to the spot where it's pretty muddy, and you kind of have to dismount, and so we walk through it. And then the guy in front of me remounts his bike and pedals on, and so I do the exact same thing. And when I do that, I don't get clipped in right away. And I just put new pedals on the bike. I put some Crank Brothers egg beaters, which have been great so far, on the bike. But I got one foot in, but by the time one pedal struck around, I still wasn't quite used to remounting under the pedals, and so I wasn't quite clipped in completely. And I hit this weird little rut, and it bounced me sideways, and I end up going over in the grass and just completely eating it on the bike. And this had been basically my first bike crash for a year basically. And so I go down, I bonk my knee and a few other things, and I hurt, but I'm okay. But I get up, and my left brake hood is not only is it crooked towards the center of towards the wheel, but it's also slid down on the drops. And so I get up, I bend it back as best I can, and keep riding. And so I'm like already wounded, and riding with a goofed up brake hood. And so my hands were for the rest of the evening just sort of off kilter.
Weird, yeah.
But I mean the rest of the ride was a lot of fun, and it was just unlike any other bike riding really that I've ever done, even back in the days, as a kid growing up mountain biking, because we went through mud, we went through deep sand where it's like, 4 or 5 inches deep in some places, and if you don't have the speed, you have to get off your bike and run through it because there's just no way. And we're weaving through trees, and it was a lot of fun. And then at a certain point...
So this is where you're going, God, why don't I have a fat bike? This would be ideal fat bike.
It would be ideal, but at the same time, it's like, as these people, it's like, oh, you can't take a cross bike through here. Everyone was like, fuck you. We could take a cross bike through here, you wimps. And I mean, it's just like, and I think that's sort of the attitude that's developed, and I don't know for sure, but just from what I heard on this ride is like people are like, oh, the only way to ride the river bombs is a fat bike. It's like, no, you just got to ride a bike.
I would totally say I've never been there, but from everything I've read is like, no, you can ride it with whatever bike you got.
Yeah.
But from what I have heard also is that mountain bike, fat bike, you're going to have a better time.
Well, you're going to have a better time in a way. I mean, part of the fun of riding a cross bike through those conditions is, for me, for learning how to become a better cross rider. It's perfect because I learned how to ride in the gnarliest terrain. I learned how to get on and off my bike, and that sort of stuff. And I forgot to put the video back. Let's put the video back. But so, I mean, it was perfect training, really, for just sort of bike handling and that sort of stuff. And I was happy to have, I was only riding 32s in there. Some people had wider tires. And so wider tires, of course, are going to help, especially in the sand. But, I had no problems, and no one else did, except with there's a few spots where you were forced to get off your bike and run through it. But that was, in some ways, it was kind of part of the fun. But so we, do this huge section. It's getting darker. We get to this bridge that's closed, and we have to like climb through like fences, and the bridge is partially out, so we're walking across the girders of the bridge, like these I-beams, these rusted I-beams. It had this very Indiana Jones Temple of Doom feel, where like the bridge is going to give out at any minute, and we're riding through it. So it was so much fun. It was just one of those things that, unlike the Wilderness Collective, it was an adventure, without douchiness. So I hate the Wilderness Collective. But so it was just so much fun. And so we get back to some city streets. We're cutting through there. It's starting to rain a little bit. And we get back down, and we dive back down into another section of the river bottoms. And, everyone's got their lights on, and so I turned the light on that they had loaned me. And we're... Oh, shit. Come on. Okay, there it is.
Yeah, we're all right.
Okay.
We're all right, yeah.
We get back to this section of, it's sort of like two grass tracks, sort of back along the river bottoms. Much more, no sand, but there's still a lot of mud. And all of a sudden my light goes off. I'm like, what the hell? And so I turn it back on again, and it goes back on. And then we're riding for a little while, and it goes off again. So clearly it's dying. Yeah. And we're going fast. I'm, sort of in the lead group of people. And we're going fast through here, probably, 20-something miles an hour, it felt like. And, there's puddles and mud and that sort of stuff. And so you just plow through it and go through it as best you can. But, like, I don't have a light. And so I'm chasing the lead group ahead of me just so I can see their
light. I'm done, yeah.
Yeah, so just so I can see their light. And when I see them hit a puddle, I'm like, well, here we go. Because 5 seconds later, or really half a second later, I'm plowing through that. And so it was kind of an intense chase, because it's like, any one of these sections, normally I would think, no way, I'm going to crash through this. But I just like...
That's very racy of you.
Gotta go. Yeah. It was just one of those things, you just had to do it. And
in both senses of the word. That's
yeah. So it was a lot of fun in the end. I got banged up. My bike got banged up. And my bike was absolutely covered in mud, like absolutely caked in mud. It took me an hour to wash it, and there's still mud in it in places that I didn't like. Like there's a spot to mount fenders or a rack or something on my bike, and the threads for this where you'd stick the screw in are still caked in mud. So I need to like ram those out with like a chopstick or something, and it's just the bike is still not clean, even though I've cleaned it. So that was week one of having the bike. I'd done one cross race. I'd done the river bottoms. I'd already crashed it, brought it back to the shop to have them fix it, because not only was the brake hood screwed up. I think that was the main defect at that point, was the brake hood was screwed up. Oh, and when I was washing it, either I hit it a certain way or the wind blew it over, and it landed drive side, and so I bent the derailleur hanger. So I'd bring it to the shop, have them fix that sort of stuff. So now we're coming back to the cross racing. And so in Minnesota during the end of August, September months, there's something called Tuesday Night Cross. And I think a lot of places do this, where it's sort of like early season road racing, where we have the practice crits on Tuesday night. Tuesday Night Worlds is what that's called. And so Tuesday Night Cross is happening, and so the first week, I did relatively well in that. And this next week, and what's cool about how things work, or how they're doing it this year at least, is cross, like road racing, has its categories, but since it's the practice series, they're not doing a USA Cycling sanctioned events, and so they can do things a little bit differently. And so the way they do it, rather than breaking it down into categories, they just say beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And the differences between, and it's self-selecting, and the differences between those categories are a 30-minute race, 45-minute race, and 60-minute race. And so the first week I did a 45-minute race. It was, no big deal. I had, a week before that done 3 different cross practices where I'd done my first attempts at going over barriers that went horribly. And then the second time I had attempted to jump over barriers also went horribly, but less horribly, but more spectacularly when I did fail, because I was getting confident. And then the third time, when I was put on by the Minnesota Cycling Federation, I was attempting barriers. There was one spectacular failure, but by and large, I was starting to get the hang of it. I'm like, okay, I can do this. And when it came time to actually racing, I was like, okay, I can go over these barriers with some amount of confidence, and it's not such a big deal. And hey, I'm getting this sort of thing. And every single remount, I was doing it, with poor form because I was jumping, and you're never supposed to jump. But I was doing it without castrating myself, so I was like starting to get confident in this bike racing thing. And so with the second Tuesday night cross coming up, I thought, maybe I should give, because I'm category 3 on the road, category 4 in cyclocross. Maybe I should give the advanced course a try just to see if I'm category 3 level in cyclocross and see how I can hang with those people. And I was like, well, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I should just try to have fun with cyclocross and do Cat 4 and that sort of stuff and just stick with that. Get some wins if I can and then move up at that point. Well, it turns out I was too late. I got there too late, so I had to do the 60-minute race, and so I was forced into that. And so, this is coming after River Bottoms, Stay Classy Classic, and another big ride before that. So like a weekend full of high volume, and so I was just feeling toast. And so right as the race starts, my heart rate was just through the roof. I was like just miserable, and I was like, I can't finish this race. And like I'm 10 minutes in, I'm like, there's no way I can finish this race, and it was really unpleasant. And of course, cyclocross, the sprint is always at the beginning of the race, which is kind of unusual. And if you get poorly positioned at the beginning, it's not the end of the world, but in a lot of cases it kind of is, because it's really hard to move past people in a cyclocross course, just because the corners are so tight and that sort of stuff. You can do it, especially as people get tired, but you want to position yourself well to begin with. And that's also kind of the fun of cyclocross racing too, is that once the race starts, after a couple of laps, it is really hard to tell where you're standing in the race if you're not at the very pointy end of the spear, because you just don't know. And so at that point, you just start to pay attention to your body and just say, okay, I'm going to do the best I can and see what happens. And in my first race, I was like, oh, I'm way back here. But as the race went on, I started picking up people, and I'm like, oh, I'm actually starting to do okay. It's not such a big deal. And, I ended up being 13th. And so this race, I just felt miserable, but again, as the race went on, my heart rate kind of came down a little bit. I sort of settled into the pace that I needed to settle into, and I started picking up people, and things started getting better. And so what was unique about this course that I hadn't encountered before was the first course, they had barriers, so you had to jump over those. Those were hard, that sort of stuff. But this course had a barrier right before a hill, and so you had to jump off your bike, and you had to choose between remounting and crushing up the hill, which I did the first couple of times, and it worked. It worked pretty well, but you have to remount, get into your pedals fast enough so that you can actually climb the hill. Otherwise, you kind of screw up. And there was one time where I did that, where I remounted, got into one pedal, but I couldn't get into the other, and climbing was hard, and eventually I just got off the bike again and shouldered the bike and ran up the rest of the way. And so, but as you got more tired, shouldering the bike made more and more sense. And so, I'm already 20 minutes into the race, 25 minutes into the race, and I'm feeling miserable. And when you're cross racing, you're never carrying any water because you don't have bike cages so you can shoulder your bike, bottle cages so you can shoulder your bike. And so all of the hecklers are situated up on top of this hill, of course, because this is where all of this sort of the action is happening. Also, it's where people are moving slowly, so if you want to do hand-ups, it's easy to do. If you're going to heckle people, you've also got plenty of time to do it because they're going slowly, that sort of stuff. And so I come around the corner, and I'm dismounting my bike to jump over the barrier. And I've already at this point decided that I'm going to shoulder my bike and run up the hill. And so I dismount the bike and I shoulder the bike. And there's a guy there with a megaphone, and he's got whiskey shots. And so he's yelling at me to take the whiskey shot. And I was like, at this point, I'm like, I don't care about this race anymore. I just want to survive. So screw it. I'm taking this whiskey shot. And there's a friend of mine captured this on video, and he did such a nice job of capturing the video. So I'll be sure to put this on the Facebook post when we post this episode. But it's just it was great because I jumped the barrier, I shoulder my bike, guy's giving me whiskey. I just take a moment to just take the whiskey, give a little cheers to the guy, drink the whiskey, and go marching up the hill. And keep running and go. And the best part is just we've talked about before with the Almanzo and the Inspiration 100 last year. Just that tiny little bit is enough sugar and alcohol or whatever. It just takes the edge off, and after that point,
it makes it fun again.
I didn't feel like $1 million, but I felt like at least $20, and and I was able to kind of go about my business. Where I made a huge mistake, though, was that later in the race, my friend, my wife and I, after my first race, I had learned that it was a huge mistake not to show up to the race with some beer for after the race to hang out and watch the next race after that. And so I vowed to not make the same mistake again. And so I told my wife, who was coming from work, to pick up a six-pack of some beer. And so I think in the fridge we had some Ranger IPA. And so she showed up with some Ranger IPA, and we were giving it out to friends. And so I'm going around the course, and one of my teammates was following me around on the bike I could see, and he catches up to me at a certain point and hands me a full unopened Ranger IPA. And his intent was that I would take that to Heckler Hill after crossing the barrier and, like a champ, pop the beer and drink the whole thing as I'm running up the hill, remount my bike, and go about my business on the race. But of course, I'm suffering in spite of even having a whiskey shot, and just thirsty as can be, and still pretty miserable, honestly. And all I could think about was, screw it.
Yeah.
I'm not, I don't care about my position in this race anymore. I just want to finish this thing and just go home.
Be done, yeah.
and drink some beer. And so he gives it to me as I'm climbing a hill, which ends in a hairpin turn and goes downhill into a second hairpin turn. And so he gives it to me, and as he's saying, save it for like the Heckler Hill spot, I'm cracking it open, and he's like, okay. And I start drinking it as I'm going up the hill. I come around the hairpin turn, and I come around the hairpin turn somewhat okay, but a little bit wide. And at that point I realize, this is going to be really hard. And so I'm sitting there holding my beer. My left hand is on the brake hood, and I do what you never should do when going into a turn, is look where you don't want to go. And so I'm looking at the barriers in cyclocross, or at least for local low-level cyclocross, are just sort of like police tape wrapped around plastic stakes. And you see people run into them all the time. The tape breaks. People set the stakes back up. It's no big deal. So I'm looking at where I don't want to go, and so of course I start heading there, which is straight into the tape. And I'm like, oh shit, I'm gonna crash. I'm gonna hit the tape, but it's just the tape, no big deal, right? And so rather than throwing the beer and collecting myself and navigating the course and just going about my business, I think, no, beer, I can't spill my beer. This is my beer. And so I hit the tape, and rather than, I thought, okay, I'll hit the tape, no big deal. I'll just break the tape. I'll stop, get shit back together, get back in the race, and it'll be silly and that sort of stuff. It does this straight up Wile E. Coyote thing where it stretches around me and goes like boing, and then I come to a complete stop and then go flipping over my handlebars, whacking my right knee really hard, I think on the stem or something like that, whacking my left quad, I don't know on what, and I have these like 2 marks on my leg that look like a vampire, took a bite out of me, and this huge bruise that looked like a Cheshire cat for a long time. And I spilt the entire beer.
What? Oh.
I know. So I didn't win in any fashion. And so, like, my friend's like, oh, my God, I am so sorry. I'm like, dude, it's not your fault. I am an idiot.
That was all me.
And so, like, I crash out of the race. I collect myself, and I'm like, where's the beer? And he, like, hands it to me, and it's this empty can. I'm like, no. Oh. And so I go back to try to, like, get back on the course. I pick my bike up, put it back down. I like lift my right leg, which is the one I hit on the stem really hard on the knee, to like go over the fence so I can get back on the race. And my knee is like, nope, you are not going any further. And I was like, damn it. I've never, I've dropped out of one race, because there was only 1 lap left after I crashed my crits. But this is the first race that I'd sort of abandoned. I didn't really feel good about that. But I was like, no, my knee says stop. I'm going to go drink beer. And then after I did that, I realized that my handlebars were like 45 degrees out of line. So I was like, time to call it a day.
It's done. Yeah.
So
you got to listen to your body.
Exactly.
Especially, and if your body isn't making it loud enough, your bike will. Your bike will say, like, oh, by the way, your knee was right. No,
exactly.
We're done.
Exactly.
We're done.
So I quit the race. I was bleeding. My knee was swelling. I developed this amazing bruise on my left leg with
You
vampire.
didn't even have a full mediocre IPA.
Yeah, with vampire teeth and all that sort of stuff.
That sucks.
So I didn't feel very good about that. And some people were like, "Man, come on, you can't. DFL is much better than DNF." And I'm like, "Well, I thought so too, but my body and my bike said no, so I'm fine with that."
I'm done. I'm good with DNF.
But so here we are. I buy a brand new bike on Monday. On Saturday, I have my very first crash on it, destroy it, bring it into the bike shop, they fix it. On Tuesday, I have my second crash on it.
I like that you brought it down here to ride for a while and be like, yeah, everything's okay.
Yeah.
And then you take it up there and like,
Yep. And so Tuesday, I crashed again, completely of my own fault, because I'm an idiot, and I'm trying to drink a beer through a hairpin turn, which you should not try doing. Bring it back into...
Yeah.
I fixed the whole alignment issue, because that's not hard to fix, but then I realized I've knocked the wheel out of true. And so...
Oh, Jesus.
So I bring it in, and they fix it up for me. So that's on Tuesday. And now on Saturday...
Way to go Omnium. Like, good job,
Exactly. On Saturday, and here's the final story for you, I have a race coming up, which is sort of a major milestone for me, because in terms of bike riding...
1 year of gravel racing.
And really bike racing. And it's the Inspiration 100, which is something you've heard about us talk about on this podcast before. On our old podcast, we did a whole recap of it. Maybe someday we'll just re-release that episode here, just so you can hear it. If we're...
I honestly feel really horrible about not doing it this year, and I really wanted to, especially when I saw the times, because I'm like, oh man, I totally would have been like, I don't know how many fat bikes were on the course, but I would have been competitive, man.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm sure there were a few.
There was at least a few, but it was also hard for me to see.
Well, honestly, like, you don't have eyes in the back of your head.
Exactly.
So.
But so this is a big milestone for me, because I signed up for it not knowing if I wanted to do it again, but I signed up for it anyway, because it's like, I got to do it again, because it was my first race. I want to come back and see how I can do.
Yeah, that's right. It was your first race.
First race ever. And
I thought it was just your first gravel race, but it is
it was
first race.
My first race ever. And so I felt sort of an obligation to come back and do it, just because I was like, I want to... Oh, hello. My sneaky wife just arrived home, and it was very creepy, actually. But so
Hi, sneaky wife.
I wanted to come back and do it, and even though I wasn't terribly excited about doing another gravel race, just because, like, okay, I did the Almanzo and that sort of thing, but actually that's not true. I was excited to do it because now I had a proper bike, and all the other gravel races I'd done, I'd either done on a mountain bike or my old commuter bike. And
I would like to point this out as well. Okay, so because I'm a little bit selfish in this. Okay, so this was your first bike race. This is your first gravel bike race. But at the same time, this is going to sound selfish, and also at the same time, like, people are going to go like, God damn it, you're an asshole, Kevin. Because this. Okay, so Andrew's first bike race, as he puts it, he's riding his mountain bike, which is, I don't know how many speed, whatever it is.
Like 8,
I decide, like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to ride this one single speed, man. Bam! Because I'm so awesome. And did I finish it? Sure I did. But Andrew, like, catered me for 66 miles. Like, he, like, stayed with me and, like, hey, like, are you all right? Like, I'm get to the top of a hill, and I'm like, at the beginning of the race, I'm like, I'm gonna beat you to every top of every hill, and like, it only took like 3 hills before I'm like, well, that's not true. And so it was, I think it was at it was somewhere around like mile 70, where I remember this vividly. We were coming over a highway, and there was a gravel road that goes over a bridge. Mm-hmm. And there's a bridge, and I come over the road, and you were there waiting for me. And you go like, so do you mind if I just, like, go? And I'm like, dude, just go. Like, God, just ride. Like, you never had to wait for me. I have directions. Just go. And so then Andrew takes off and finishes like an hour before me. But it was it's one of those things where I'm like, I remember this vividly because I'm like, single speed finishing, I was still second.
Yeah.
Single speed,
Yeah.
you know, and so I'm pretty proud of that. That's the best finishing I've ever done in my life. But at the same time, I did spend 5 minutes laying down in a cemetery going like, oh my God, I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
You know, because it was so hot that
When
day.
I was also 100
And
degrees.
Andrew's still like, Andrew's still piling it on. So that is something I want to point out as far as this race goes. Like, this is the elevation isn't serious.
No.
I mean, it's like
It's a lot of
6,000,
rollers.
7,000. It's a lot of rollers.
Yeah.
It's all gravel. It's pretty soft gravel, or it was.
It was. It wasn't
But,
this year.
Andrew will tell us about it now. So we've both done this course, and now I'm going to provide the rebuttal for Andrew. Well, he says like, yeah, and this wasn't so bad, and I'll be like, oh, but it was. You know. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, so as I said, I was sort of so according to this year's, it was only 3,319 feet of elevation gain. So it's
Are
not
you
a
serious?
lot. Yeah, it's not a lot. Well, I should look
I
at
thought
last
it was
year's.
like 6,000 last year.
Well, I'll have to compare my last year log of it. But,
No, wait, that can't be right. That can't be right.
It's not that much though. I mean, it's a lot of rollers, and the
All
course
right,
was
anyway.
only slightly different this year. But you feel more of it because it's rollers. There's not a lot of real like true straight up climbing.
It was like 4,000.
Maybe,
So-
yeah. So it's somewhere in there. But
Yeah.
so I was not looking forward to it just because I don't know why. Just based on like doing the
I'm pro-
Almans.
And
Well, yeah, more so it's like that cyclocross season is starting, and that's what I'm going to try to focus on. And so this is sort of an extra thing. Am I going to actually do it? But since there's nothing else going on, there's no cyclocross races that I need to like target or anything like that. I was like, okay, I should do this. And then when I came down to actually doing it, and the real hesitation I had was that I don't want to do another gravel race on a bike that I don't enjoy riding. And so once it came to the fact that I was actually going to have a new bike, and I was like, okay, now I have a proper bike to actually do a gravel race on. Now I think I actually might like this. because it was super frustrating to do it on a mountain bike because while
You can't go as fast as your body
I can't go as fast as I want. It's got the bike I have has front suspension, which is annoying. It's got my handlebars, which I find uncomfortable. And then my meter bike, which would fine for the Alonso, but not great. It just doesn't handle, and so it's like always feels like I'm teetering on the falling. And so that was so I guess that's actually probably the truth in my head.
Even though you finished 20 whatever, like 40, 46. It doesn't matter.
But anyway, so before when I signed up for the race,
drinking.
when I signed up for the race, as the race got closer, I got more and more excited about it. And one of the reasons for that is that I've ridden a lot of centuries since the last time we did this race, and I've gotten faster and faster at doing these. And when I looked at last year's times, the finishing time, and of course this is at 100 degrees or whatever it was,
yeah,
deep
and
gravel.
soft gravel.
Exactly, was 5 hours and 29 minutes.
Which I thought was absolutely ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. I mean, those were some brutal, horrible, awful conditions. But I looked at the time and I said, okay, I can probably. I mean, I've done centuries way faster than that, but not on gravel. But I mean, that's a number that I can work with. Maybe I can actually win this race. And one of the cool things about the Inspiration 100 that all the other gravel races that I've done, which has only been 3, has been the Gravel State, Inspiration 100, and the Almanzo.
Alfonso, yeah.
One of the fun things about the Inspiration is that they have these trophies that are these just rough blocks of wood with hand done Sharpie markers and a big chain rig, and it's so rustic, it's awesome. It's one of the coolest trophies I've seen. And I remember telling you after I saw these things last year, like, God damn it, I want one of those. It's just, they're so cool. And so I just, when I looked at this race and after I registered for it and after I got a new bike, I started to get excited about the prospect of actually riding it again, because it's like, you know what? I am well positioned to do well in this race, and I want to win this race, but regardless, I can do well in this race, and I want to do top 10 at the very least, top 10.
Yeah.
And so now I was starting to get super excited about doing it because all of the pieces were sort of aligning to make this something that was going to be fun and not just a grueling, punishing fest. So
Yeah.
So I two other teammates signed up to do it with me, so that was a lot of fun. And one of my teammates' family lives out in Alexandria, so we got to stay with them, and that was super nice of them to let us stay with them.
That was nice. Wow.
Yeah, so it worked out perfectly because we,
Great.
got there the night ahead of time, had some dinner, went to bed, got up, had breakfast, and we're only 5 miles away from the start line, so it was no big deal.
Right on.
Yeah, it was
Wow.
perfect. It was perfect.
Yeah.
And so, what was amazing about this year's start is it felt exactly like last year's start. The sun's rising. There's a small number of people there. It just had this, the Inspiration 100. I would suggest if people are
If you're
interested,
going to do a gravel race, that's the one.
that's the one. Yeah, especially now that there's no Almanzo to look forward to. This is a race you should check out. And they had a cap this year of 135. I think only 86 people raced it. But if you can get your name in that hat, do it. And maybe next year with no Almanzo, maybe they'll raise the cap or something. But frankly, I think I like this race better than Almanzo for a lot of reasons. And
I like it, like how you said, like I didn't experience it this year, but last year, like where you say, like where the sun is just coming up.
Yep.
You're getting your bike ready. You're taking pictures of your bike because, like, oh, this is going to be great, and there's all these other people doing the exact same thing, and it's just gravel roads, this weird little playground and an elementary school,
Yep.
and, it's just very old. It feels very, what's the word, hometownish.
yeah, exactly.
It doesn't feel like, like this is a pro race. It feels like this is people who love bikes.
Yeah.
We're gonna ride bikes.
People.
Why?
We're gonna
Because we
go
like
out for a
bikes,
race. It's
Yeah.
very unofficial. There's official bits to it. There's neutral rollouts, there's timing and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's just.
But especially like last year, how there was the points where you would see pictures of people who like stopped their race to jump in the lake.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Exactly.
know, I'm like, that's awesome. Why? Because it was 100 degrees. That's why. And I honestly thought about doing the same thing when I was doing it. So, like,
Right.
wow, that water.
Well, and
looks
that's one of the things that
great.
I have learned to appreciate, especially now that I'm on a bike that I enjoy riding, about gravel races is that they tend to be low key. I mean, they're not low key in any sense because people are there to race them, and if you're there to race it, you've got competition. But one of the fun things about it is that, as I said earlier, if you want it to be, it's very much an individual time trial. You can treat it however you want, and it's oftentimes they're free. I would highly recommend donating money, so they're really not free
Right.
because you should donate some money. But a road race has a very different feel because in a crit, you can get pulled from the race if you're going too slow because just for safety reasons. Road races, you're not going to get pulled, but if you lose sight of the group, you're sort of on your own. It's a different sort of thing. Whereas this, you just do what you want to do and make the race that you want to make for yourself, and you do that and have a good time with it and that sort of thing. And there's no, you don't have to have a license, which is not a bad thing to have, and I think everyone should try, USA Cycling racing. But there isn't that barrier there. There's no categories to race with, and so if you're interested in racing the lead, field, you might be racing like in the in the Almanzo. When I was in the lead pack, there were pros there. There was Cat 1, Cat 2 racers there. So it's kind of a neat way for you to be able to get to race against people who might be in a higher category than you.
Right.
So it's kind of fun in that sense, and it's just this very free form, and you get to make it the race that you want it to be. So this year's race felt at the start very much like last year's race, except for this year's race, I was like positioning myself right at the front, ready to go. Here we go, And the difference between this year and last year was that they lengthened the course to 105 miles instead of 100, just to make sure that you were actually doing 100 miles.
Yeah, because I'm looking at my old Q sheets right now, and it was last year was 99.6.
Right, and they're like, people were like pissed because they had to like do laps in the parking lot to make their
See, and
odometer
that's where I
click
say,
over
like, at
100.
that point, like, relax. You know, like, come on.
Right.
Yeah.
But so we do the neutral rollout, and you know, the gravel conditions. I had a hunch from this year, just based on the amount of rain that we got, that they were going to be much nicer than they were last year, which were just deep and loose and gross. And the first section proved that, you know, to be the truth right away, and so that was super nice.
Well, I was going to say, like, last year we both rode mountain bikes, and I don't think either of us were regretting the mountain bike tire choice.
I was nervous about it at first because I was like,
Yeah.
oh, it's going to be so slow and so hard, and then I watched all these people on cross bikes ahead of me
And they
just
were
like
just
fishtailing
slogging.
left and
Yeah.
right, and
Yeah.
I was super happy with that
I
decision.
mean, it was a very soft course last year, so that's the one thing about gravel riding as opposed to road riding is, you know, it's very variable in the conditions and what year it is and that sort of thing.
and it's hard
So,
to predict
like,
what you're gonna
If someone
encounter.
says, like, oh yeah, by the way, you know, I rode El Monza or Inspiration in 2013, you know, and it was X, be like, well, that doesn't mean anything this year.
Right,
you
right,
know?
exactly.
It could be entirely different, and you know, I'm actually really, really glad that it was easier conditions this year for you, because it kind of lets me know, you know, what the average conditions might be so for next year. So that's pretty good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you know, when racing started, I was, you know, in the front basically the entire time, and you know, I rotate positions with other people in front of me. But the neat thing about this was that after a season of road racing, this felt like road racing to me, and I liked it, because, you know, having the season end like that, it's nice to sort of take a break from it and just do kind of different kinds of riding, but I miss it at the same time. And so now this is a situation where it's different, but it's the same sort of vibe, like we're, you know, working on pace lines, people are sharing the duties, pulling in the front, tactics are there. You know, it's something that I've been doing and that I love, and like, oh, here's a new way for us to do that. And
so there were actually like a group of 5 to 6 people that were actually sharing the load with you at the front, and
quite a bit more than that at the beginning. Yeah, I mean, they're in the front group. I mean, it was pretty. You know, I said there was 86 people or something like that, I think, who registered and were there for it. At the beginning of the race, you know, who knows how many people were up at the front, you know, going for it.
Right.
I would say at least 20-something at the beginning, maybe more. But, you know, I was always sort of in the top 10 people, just kind of trying to maintain my position there. And so who knows what was really going on. But, you know, it's the sort of thing, like you do your pull in the front, you try to rotate yourself back so you're not constantly pulling, and I would stay behind people. But so that continued for quite a while.
Here's the thing that I really need to, you know, I'm sorry to like keep pushing you through this race,
it's fine.
But the one thing that I'm really wondering is, this is one of my favorite races of all time because of one section of road, and it's called Norwegian Road.
Well, let's step back though a bit before that, because
well, I know there's the one section of cornfield before that.
Yeah, and which last year and also this year is also kind of my least favorite parts of the race, because
it took out Ben Doom last year.
Well, last year it took out Ben Doom, and I think I actually saw his rock at high speed as I weaved around it, because there was a big rock that almost took me out. But last year I didn't like it because there was a spot where you just couldn't ride your bike anymore. You had to hop off.
It was sloppy.
It was impassable, you know, last year I was going much slower.
I never had to get off my bike, but yeah.
Yeah, I did last year, and so this year, when we came through it, there was a guy who I ended up riding with for the rest of the race, and in fact, the guy who won it last year. And I sort of recognized actually what he was doing when he was doing it. So there's a section of the race where it's through, at first, a grass field that turns into a cornfield, and it's 2 tire tracks through this grass field, and so you can choose between the tire tracks basically which one you're going to ride through.
You definitely want to choose the right.
Yeah, pretty much. And so he was taking turns with me at the front, and I was constantly kind of keeping an eye on him, because there's a lot of dudes from Metal, which is a local team here.
Yep.
And there was
Metal
this guy.
Cross is really good. Yeah.
And there was this guy from Grand Performance riding, and he was the only GP guy that I saw. up at the front. And so he was taking his turns up the front for sure. But then when it came to time where I knew the grass track was coming, he pulled up and like basically sprinted towards the front and making sure that he would be the first one through it. And I saw that and I was like, that's
smart.
That's a smart idea.
That's smart.
And so I pulled up behind him and was sort of riding his wheel as we entered the grass track. And the mistake that I made, I was way too close to him. And so we're going through, he weaves around a rock, the rock that probably took out Ben Doom, and I weave around the same rock too. And we're keep going, and there's this huge puddle, and he shouts out something like puddle or hole or whatever. And he weaves to the left around it towards the center where there's a big, grass section. I do the exact same thing, but my back tire fishtails in it.
Oh, no.
And in order to recover from the crash, or from what would become a crash, is I sort of corrected and went straight and into the grass section. And I thought when I did that, I was safe. I was good. But then when I hit the grass, there was either a slope or wet grass or something, and all of a sudden I went sideways.
My guess is Gopher Mound, but
maybe, who knows? Yeah, but I was sideways, and I ate shit super hard. I hit my right shin on something. Below the kneecap, and I was already swollen on my right knee from
cross,
not cross, but from actually no,
river
cross.
bottom.
Who knows? It could be cross or river bottom. Actually, it was cross. It was cross. And so I hit the deck really hard. My knee is killing me, but as I'm hitting the deck, I know that, and I hear people behind me saying "rider down." And I turn behind me to just sort of just ball up if I need to. And there are riders left and right going, and my cue cards fell off, and they fell into the dirt track. And so I'm looking behind me, and I just have to rip my hand in there and grab the cue cards before someone runs over them. And so I grab my cue cards, get my bike up. I just give a glance at the bike over. But as soon as I stand up, my right leg is just raw, just absolute pain. And I'm like,
okay. And this is like 20 miles in.
Less than that, 10, 12 miles in.
Well, according to last year's mileage chart, a Norwegian road is 24.
Yeah.
So this must be somewhere around 18 then.
It's less than that, I think. It's 10 miles. It should say on there grass track, I think, but
it doesn't.
But it's not that far in. It's
anyway,
it's somewhere between 10 and 20 miles. And so I've already fallen. And I honestly, for a second, was asking myself if I had broken my leg, one of the bones in my legs. It hurt that bad that standing on it hurt really bad. And of course I knew, I'm just swelling up from hitting it really hard. But I was I don't know if...
here it is. Okay, 9.2, yes.
Yeah, and there was a few more miles on this year's thing ahead of that, so it's probably mile 12 or something. But so I was really hurting. And so much so that I was fuck, I'm pulling out of the race because this hurts so bad. I don't know if I can go on. And I don't think it's broken, but there's a chance it could be. Just one of those things, if you break one of the bones in your lower leg, you could probably still get by on your second bone, but know.
Do you want to do that? Yeah.
Right. And so I'm just moving along, and I'm trying to assess the situation, saying, can I keep going? Is it safe to keep going? And that sort of stuff. And I just say, fuck it, I'm going to keep going, and just if I can't keep going, it'll be obvious, and I just got to keep pushing.
You'll find out at the first checkpoint.
Right, exactly. And so we keep going through through the grass, and fortunately, as with last year, we hit the cornfield spot, and no one can ride through it, and so it all bunches up because it's so muddy that people are going down left and right. And there was a guy behind me before I crashed who tried to ride through the mud puddle that I went through, and he totally endoed in it, and it was just completely covered in mud. And so,
and this is where I was Fat Bike is going to win on this portion and on Norwegian River.
Yeah, exactly. And so people are going down left and right all over the place because they're going through it fast and that sort of stuff. But so we get to the point where it's all bunched up and people are getting off their bikes and running, and so I'm doing it and just limping through there and just literally groaning and gritting my teeth because it just hurts like mad. And we get through it, and most of the group And in fact, the lead group, too, is just starting to pull out of there right as I'm pulling out of there because they're all picking crap off of their derailleurs and that sort of stuff and their shoes. And I say, screw that noise.
I was going to say, you're thinking too hard about this.
Yeah, and I hop on my bike and get back on it and chase them down. And I really didn't have to chase because they were just kind of leaving right as I was getting through it. And so I found myself back again with the lead group. And so at this point, we separate sort of the lead group from the rest of the people, and there's maybe 15 of us. And, I really think that, I was hurting, but I was starting to pedal and I was getting through it, and that the constantly pedaling and sort of just pushing through it just really kind of kept the swelling sort of manageable, because otherwise it would have just, gotten worse and bad. But so we get through there, and we're going through, lots of different places. We hit the first pavement section. And as we're rounding from the gravel to the pavement section, 2 people at the end of the pack totally wipe out and hit the dirt hard. And so there's 2 less people in our group. We all looked back, and it was one of those falls where you just don't worry too much about the people, and they're going to get up. They've got some road rash, and they're probably okay. And we're going very fast. Then we get to Norway Road, or Norwegian Road.
Norwegian Road, I just want to point this out to people who maybe didn't hear us a year ago when we were the Super Number 1 podcast. Norwegian Road is the most excellent road I've ever ridden in my life. It is so fun on a mountain bike. I can't imagine doing it on a cross bike.
Well,
I think it'd be crazy.
Let's put it this way.
I would lose my mind. Okay?
Let's put it this way. On a mountain bike or a cross bike at 15 miles an hour or less, it'd be a lot of fun. Yeah. On a cross bike at 20 plus miles an hour, it's terrifying.
I was gonna bet. I've been terrifying because you hit sand and if I don't make it through this, I'm actually gonna crack my head open and die.
Well, it's worse than that actually, because this year, last year there was a couple sections of deep sand, and that was kind of sketchy. This year there wasn't any really all that deep sand, but there was a lot of puddles and mud, and so again, I found myself sort of in position number 2, and this time I had sort of learned my lesson from my last crash, is that I need to give myself some space between myself and the guy in front of me, just so I can see what he does, and if he makes it through it, then I can do the exact same motion and not have to worry about it. But we were absolutely flying through there. I mean, I'll have to go back and look at my Strava data to see what we were doing, but I wasn't looking at my speedometer. Actually, I think I glanced at it once, but we were in the 20s easily going through that stuff, and it was crazy because we're constantly dodging, big puddles, going through mud sections, and frankly, when you're going through a section that's muddy, it helps to go fast just because you plow through it. Yeah, and it's not such a big deal. But then you hit these other sections that are loose rock,
sand and rock,
and we hit these sections too that the rocks were just massive, and they were kind of like cobbles almost, but they were not connected.
Yeah.
And in fact, one of the metal guys, I heard him behind me toward the end of the road, and I mean, I was seriously just basically saying prayers as I was going through this thing, just do not fall, do not fall, because I mean, the falls in there would have been nasty because there's trees nearby, there's rocks everywhere,
and it's nasty for everyone behind you.
Exactly, right. And so I heard one guy from metal go down, and he went down hard, and I don't know the official details on what ended up happening to him. I heard that he might have broken something because he abandoned the race and drove back to the cities and was at a doctor's the last time I heard. So I don't really know what the details of it are, but there was a photographer nearby, so there was someone there that could help him, and one of his teammates ended up stopping. And so we knew that at the time someone was checking on him, and so we felt okay about kind of pressing on after we got through it. And I think that teammate actually ended up catching back up with us and was one of our group of 5. But so someone checked on him and made sure that he was,
So here's what I have to say about people who have not experienced Norwegian Road is that, I just said a second ago that it's the most fun road in the world to ride on, and honestly, I stand by that. I think it is the most fun, minimum maintenance road you can possibly find in Minnesota to ride on that I have experienced. It is amazing. It's an amazing road, but at the same time, if you are not ready for sand, huge rocks, who knows what's coming up?
Yeah.
Like, you know, climbs that are like really short and steep, downhills that are actually short and steep.
Mm-hmm.
You can get in serious trouble on that road.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I would not trade that road for the world.
Oh, no.
Like,
It's a great road.
I'm so glad they put it in the race.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's great. And the only difference for me this year was just the fact that we were doing it at race speeds. And, man, I was so thankful for my short river bottoms experience, just because it gave me the confidence that I could go through that stuff. And
Well,
still,
last year
still you know, be like going, oh, shit, as I'm going through it. But I knew that if I would just be comfortable and not, you know, freaking out as I was going through it, I would come through the other side okay. You know.
Last year, I was watching you go through it in front of me, and we were both on mountain bikes. You know, we both had like 2-inch wide tires, going through it. And the sand parts were the part that made you go like, oh, you know, because like, I don't know, you know, like you lose your steering. You just basically have to trust your balance.
Yeah.
And you get through it. But what made me really get that section more than anything else was the fact that like you would power through, and then I would be back there going like, single speed ain't losing to that guy, you know, like, and keep going. And you know, that was what pushed me through. But it was so fun. Like, I honestly think they could make a 10-mile race of just Norwegian Road.
Yeah.
You know, and then
absolutely.
loop around it and do it again, and like, awesome. You know, that'd be the best, one of the best races ever. It's such a great road.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun.
If you ever get up into Alexandria area, please take your bike, go out, find Norwegian Road, put it in your Garmin or whatever you're gonna do, and you will not regret it.
Right.
It's such a great road.
Right, it is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, but so after we plowed through there and we heard that, or I heard that guy crash, we sort of grouped back up. We chatted about, like, did you hear about so-and-so? I didn't know his name. I still don't know who it was. But we just sort of said, and we had 2 metal guys with us, and they're like, oh, so-and-so dropped back to check on him. Or so like, okay, he's being checked on. There's a photographer there. Someone's there to help him if he needs help and that sort of stuff. And so we kept riding. But then one of the guys who checked on him, we saw him coming, and so we sort of waited a little bit because it was me, GP guy, and 2 metal guys at this point. The metal guy catches up and he tells us, oh, I checked on him and he said he was okay. He's like, I'm not sure if he said he was okay or if he groaned, but I think he's okay is what he said. And so I don't know. I don't know what ended up happening to that guy, but
that means you're okay.
Yeah, but
You're
I
conscious.
hope
All right.
I hope he's okay, but I'm worried that he might have broken something, which is not good. But so from that point on in the race, it was us 5. And so we're talking, that was about mile 30 that we hit Norwegian Road. And from that point on, it was 5 of us. And before the race, my friends and I had discussed about how much water we were going to carry. And, you know, last year I carried a Camelback. I don't enjoy carrying those during a race just because I just don't like having stuff on my back if I don't need to. And, you know, at this point, when I ride 100 miles, I usually carry 2 water bottles, granted. And, you know, I usually carry like 21 or 22 ounce water bottles. And but usually I have a stop in there. And so I knew full well that even on a hot day, like, so when I did the state road race, it was a hot day, and so I carried 3 because it was ridiculously hot and humid. And that's all I had was those 3 water bottles. And I made it, and I was super dehydrated, and that was 75 miles.
Yeah.
And so I knew that was sort of what my threshold was going to be. And, you know, that was like 86 or something degrees at least. Our day was starting out in the 50s and going to end by the time I was hoping to be done with the race in the 60, 65 range. And so I knew that I needed less water. But I was sort of planning all of my things around, like, oh, there's a stop at mile 50. I'll sort of, you know, plan on using that. But what I didn't count on was the fact that, you know, if I'm in the lead group, we're probably not going to stop. You know, because, I mean, we're in the lead group. We're racing. We're going as fast as we possibly can. There is no stopping. We talked about at, like, mile 35, we all sort of discussed, like, stopping to pee, and so we did that, but that was the only time we stopped. And so, you know, when it came down to the calculus of how much water to carry, I didn't really kind of account for that. I sort of, you know, in this strange way, knew in the back of my head that I should think about that, and so my actions sort of kind of went along those lines. But so I brought with me some bigger water bottles, which ended up being like 25 or 26 ounces. And I filled them up with Scratch Labs, and I accidentally filled one of them with a double dose of Scratch Labs. So more salt ends up probably helping me out in my cause. But so I figured I'll just carry 2 of these. I'm not going to carry a third water bottle on my back because if I, and frankly, I'm glad I didn't because I knew this might happen just with jiggling on the road. But my first crash, I would have jettisoned that bottle, no problem, and I probably would have forgotten.
If you lose it, then it's gone.
Exactly. And in fact, on Norwegian Road, I saw someone who ended up being in my group of 5 lose a bottle there, and it was gone for him. And so I set out my day with these 2 26-ounce bottles of Scratch Labs. Right before the race, I downed maybe 10 or 12 ounces of a 16-ounce bottle right before starting and set off about my way. And so as we hit mile 50, I'd already started to think about like, oh man, I've only got 2 bottles of water with me. We're probably not going to stop. But I was looking at my water consumption, and I was like, as I were hitting mile 50, I'm still not even done with my first bottle of water. So I was like, I know my consumption's going to go up later in the day, but so far I'm doing okay. I can probably do this on what water I have. And so sure enough, we get to the gas station, and we just keep on rolling. And at that point, it's just, go ahead. Oops, cut out. Hello, sir.
No.
Oh, go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
So at that point, we roll past.
That? I was going to say, was that Hill Road?
Wherever the gas station is.
I don't remember where that is. Okay.
Yeah, but so
go ahead. Yep.
So we roll past the gas station, and we don't stop, and we just keep on pressing on. And at that point, it's since mile 30, it's been 5 of us. We're sort of doing a rotating pace line for most of the time, just to sort of share the load. At the beginning of the race, I was in front a lot, doing a lot of pulling, and so was the GP guy. And so as the race is going on, and I was realizing I need to start like conserving my energy because I've been doing a lot of pulling at the beginning of the race, but also because I'm limited on water. So I don't want to, go too hard because I'm going to dehydrate myself quickly, and I have no choice but to, go on as best I can. And so as the race went on, I started kind of like, doing less pulling at the front and sitting in more that I could. I would still do my pulls, but I wouldn't do the longer ones like I had been, or like trying to set a pace like I had been earlier in the race. And so sure enough, the guy that lost his water bottle, because him and I and maybe one other person weren't wearing Camelbacks, the other 2 were, so they were set. They had a couple of water bottles filled with like sports drink and then a backpack full of water. He's like, oh guys, I'm gonna run low on water, and I told him, I'm like, well, at mile 70 this year is the Virgin Mary statue. Last year there was beer there. At mile 78, there's going to be the people from Jake's Bikes. They probably have stuff too. You'll probably be okay. And so he's like, oh, okay, that's good to hear. And so we round, we do a couple more hills. Derek is out there, the race organizer, taking pictures as we go across the hills. Yep. And we come to the Virgin Mary statue, and he's completely out of water. I've still got 3/4 of a bottle, and I'm doing okay. And he's starting to get worried about it. And so the Virgin Mary comes up, and there's people out there taking pictures, but there's no beer crew like there was last year.
What?
And so I told him, that last year.
Not give beer to people
exactly. I told him that last year that there was people giving up beer and Cokes and that sort of stuff, and so he starts to stop there. And so I slow down with him because I was like, well, shit, if he's gonna get water, I might as well get some water too. And right as I start to put on the brakes a little bit, someone attacks in our group.
Oh no.
And I'm like, well, I guess I'm not stopping. And so I just pounded on, and because I was like, I'm not going to get dropped just for water because I know I've got enough and I can suffer through. I can suffer through if I have to. And so, it was a smart attack, honestly, because, that's racing. If you're not prepared, then you're not prepared, and you deserve to get attacked on. And so I catch up, and at this point, it's 4 of us. The 5th is, getting water, and after a little while.
So they actually had water and stuff at the station, though.
No, these people were just nice enough to give him water. And so they were just people photographing the race, and they gave him.
So actually, as far as the rules of gravel racing goes, he was DQ just for that.
I guess so. I mean, if people are nice enough to give you water, then they're nice enough to give you water.
Well, yeah, but
so.
if they don't give water to everybody, that's a DQ. So that's
I don't know. It's fine. I have no problem with that.
I'm fine with that too, but I'm just saying that that's like the rules. But anyway.
But so he ended up getting some water, but he ended up catching on. And the guy who attacked, the guy who won the race last year, Nick Vetter, it was a smart attack, and I don't think he sat up. And the metal guy had two teammates, and they weren't in the front pulling, and it was this Nick guy from GP pulling, and okay.
The person whom you're trying to reach is currently unavailable. Please leave a message after the beep.
All right, there we go.
Pinwheel.
So where did I leave you at?
Let's see. You were talking with the metal guys, cycling. It had been
Hero gravel.
You dropped. What's that?
Hero gravel. Did I get to hero gravel?
No, not yet. No.
Okay. Well, anyway, I was talking about how we got to the point where, last year with like 20 miles to go, I left you, and it was hero gravel from that point on. And basically,
let's be honest, Andrew. It was like 30 miles.
I don't think it was though, honestly.
I'm just.
I don't think it was. But anyway, so the whole course for us really.
I didn't leave you that far to go.
The whole course really for us had been hero gravel the whole race this course. But that's the section where. We knew that beer was coming. We were almost done. We were getting pretty happy about that, and the gravel conditions were great. And I knew from this point on, especially based on last year's experience, that if it was great gravel last year, it was going to be great gravel this year, right. And things were going swimmingly. And now I'm starting to think about, okay, I've conserved enough energy that it's probably going to come down to a bunch sprint at this point because we're all, working together.
I'm sorry.
Dog's got a bag on his head.
My dog's head is stuck in a bag. Come here, Cody. Come on, Cody, come on. Oh, we got it. All right, bring it here. Bring it here. No. Bring it here. Coda, bring it here. Hang on a second.
Sure.
Coda. Go ahead. Oh my God.
Dumbass. Just the bag on my head. Oh,
that's one of those things only for dog owners. Like if you own a dog, you understand. Like that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. Anyway, you were saying.
So I was saying that basically, like at this point, we've only got 10, 15 miles to go. We're all looking relatively strong. People, of course, are probably getting tired, but no one's really showing any sign of being tired. And it's pretty clear that there's not going to be a breakaway from this group. No one's going to be able to launch an attack from at this point that's going to be able to stick such that they can get away and win solo. Right. So it's probably going to come down to a bunch sprint in the end. And so I'm starting to think about that. Of course, at this point, I've already been like trying to ease up as best I can because I was worried about getting dehydrated and that sort of stuff. But so things are going well. I'm just like, I'm in the lead group of 5.
Worst case scenario, you get 5th.
Worst case scenario, I get
great.
5th,
yeah.
And that's what I wanted to come into this race to do. I, of course, wanted to come into this race to win, but I didn't know if that was, I knew there was going to be some strong and fast dudes out there, and so I didn't know what that was going to mean, and so I wanted to, at the very least, do top 10. I was hoping to, at the very least, honestly, podium. I mean, that was sort of my true goal was podium.
Yeah.
But I would have been happy, especially with how the day had gone. I had already fallen really hard once. To be able to hang on and perform that way, would have been pretty happy with it.
Right.
So at mile 10, right before the turn, you may remember from last year called Mill Road, which is like not well marked.
I do.
But
it's not well marked, and they had a sign, and yeah.
It says this, like, go towards the church. Completely straight road, completely fine gravel. We're going along single file, and we're going along at about 20 miles an hour, and all of a sudden, my left wheel goes out and sideways. And I have no idea what caused it. And I had a split second to sort of try to right myself, but really I had a split second to just yell fuck as loud as I can. And I'm down and sliding on my left-hand side along the ground at 20 miles an hour. And
if you haven't done this kind of thing on your bike as a child, you don't understand.
Well, it's like I hadn't crashed like that basically ever. I mean, I had a big crash last year on the pavement. I wasn't going nearly this fast, and I just was down. It was a lot like that experience I had last year where I was like going around a corner and I was spontaneously down, and I have no idea what caused it. This was very much the same thing, and like the guy behind me was like, "Did I hit you?" like, did I hit your tire? And I said,
No.
I don't think so, because usually when you touch tires, you hear it. I mean, so it's
Yeah, you'll
like,
hear the.
it's
Yep.
possible that it happened, but I don't think it did. And the only
On
thing
gravel, I seriously doubt he was that close.
well, I mean, no, yeah, we're riding close for sure. I mean, we had to be.
But I seriously doubt he was like right on your wheel.
Well, and also in the situation we were in too, where we're going straight on a flat road, it's pretty unlikely that you touch wheels in that sort of scenario. And so I don't think that happened. The only thing I can think of is that like I hit this weird spot in the gravel where it just kind of broke loose, and like there was like a soft spot that like just grabbed my wheel and flipped it sideways. But like unlike the sensation of where you normally go through sand, you kind of wiggle and fishtail, but you go through it. This was like
this
a
is
spontaneous
just in the air, yeah.
throwing my wheel sideways, and I bounced once and thought I could maybe right myself, but really I couldn't, because all of a sudden I was just down, and I was just so angry and really more embarrassed, really, but just like, this is absurd, why am I falling right now,
Yeah.
And that's all I could think about as I was sliding across the gravel, like, this is so embarrassing, And as I was crashing, I heard the guys saying, guys, stop, and like, I just thought, too, when I heard them doing that, I'm like, that's,
No, go.
well, not so much that, but it's just like, that's pretty awesome
very
that it's very gentlemanly, it's very sporting that they, like, took the time.
See if you're okay.
Like, we're in the point where we're all thinking about winning the race, and they said, let's neutralize this, make sure he's okay, and then we'll, get on with our race. And so I, like, get off the ground, and I'm like, just hopping around because I'm like hurting, because I'm, bleeding out of my arm and my leg and that sort of stuff. And they stop and they check on me, and I was just angry, like that this had happened. I was like, what the fuck? This is so ridiculous. And I'm just like, guys, thank you for stopping. Just go. My race is done. Just go. And I just thought, fine, I'll take fifth. No big deal. I've fallen twice in this race. I'm happy with fifth place. This is stupid. So I tell them to go. I tell them that I'm okay. I think my bike is fine enough that I can finish. And so they're like, okay, we'll go. So they start going, and I get back on my bike, and the chain's completely off, and so I spin it back on, and I find out that my right shifter, which controls the rear derailleur, is no longer working. And so I'm like spinning, I'm in my chain ring, but I'm spinning my brains out, and I'm like trying to shift, and like, no way I'm gonna catch these, because it's just not working. And so I hit my shifter a few times, bash it, and I keep playing with it. Eventually, I'm able to work enough. I was thinking before this, I should just hop off my bike and throw it down and see if I can get it to work. I didn't do that, but I eventually got a shifter to work enough that I could get it down far enough so that I could use my railer to have a high and low gear basically. And I'm like, oh, okay, so I can work with this basically. And now I'm riding on adrenaline, because I'm like just completely took off all kinds of skin. And I'm like, feeling pretty good. And so I start catching the guys in front of me, and I see them up at Moe Road, and I'm starting to slowly catch them. And I don't know if they look back and see me coming, and they started to sort of sit up a little bit. But when they hit the Moe Road thing, like, two of them took a wrong turn and overshot the road.
Again?
Yeah. They overshot the road.
Oh my God, that happened last year. Yeah.
I mean, they only overshot it by like 20 feet, but enough they had to slow down.
It's enough.
Yeah, and so once that happened, they probably saw me coming and maybe discussed that they should sit up a little bit and let me catch on. I don't know. But so anyway, once they made that wrong turn, I made the turn and I caught up back with the group. And, they're like, hey, welcome back. We're probably going to regret, letting you, come back into our group. And we really took that wrong turn on purpose and that sort of stuff. And so I said, thank you. And, I appreciate it. And they're asking me how I was feeling, and I was like, well, fine, and that sort of stuff. And they're like, yeah, we'll probably regret this.
Oh, yeah, you will. Yeah.
And so we're riding along, and I was started to think about, like, okay, what happens? Like, I've only got 2 gears to work with here, but really, what happens if we get to the point where I could actually try to win this race? Should I win this race? I mean, they set up for me. Is it fair for me to win this race? And so I sort of debated that in my head, and I was like, of course it's fair for me to win this race. I mean, they were sportsmen, and they sat up and they waited for me, and that was the a decent thing to do.
Yeah, it was very, very sportsmanly.
It was very sportsmanly, but if that's sportsmanly for them to wait for me, it's also fair game for me to win the race, because that's the whole part of the sportsmanship, and that's why they set up, is they're giving me a chance to actually do the thing.
Catch on and like.
I decided that I was like, okay, I'm not gonna worry about this. I'm not gonna like say you guys win the race because I crashed like an idiot. So I was just gonna say.
Well, the thing is that it would have been different if you had crashed because like you were behaving like a moron.
Right. Or if I had caused the crash.
Like if you just catch like a weird rock and like something. I mean, honestly, that's gravel racing. You catch a weird rock
and shit happens.
Shit happens.
Yeah.
And like
it's like it would have been different had I caused a crash and taken out someone else and then tried to beat that person. That'd be a little bit different of a story, because had something been my fault to take someone out of the race and then I won the race, that'd be a different story. But the fact that no one else was injured, weird things happened. I was like, okay, this is no big deal. I just need to, I just need to do the best I can and not worry about it. And
like the case in point, like when I was growing up, I grew up on all gravel roads. Like if we wanted to get to a tar road, it was at least 1.5 miles to tar.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember riding to Little League on my Huffy, single speed Huffy with the coaster brakes, and going down this really steep hill on gravel, and like coaster braking it, and just I've done this hill hundreds of times. Like I've done it many, many times. Something weird happened on that point that just like I hit a weird rock.
Yeah, and
I have no idea what happened. But I remember this, is that I went through the air 360 degrees laterally over the road and like slid on my chest like down the hill to where I had this like, I don't know if it was a Twins or a Vikings, or it was like a jersey of some team or something like that, and I had lettering on it, and I got up and all the lettering was gone.
Ooh.
From being scratched off by the gravel. And the thing is, that jersey like saved my chest from being all scratched off. So it was like, that was great.
Right.
But I remember getting up, going like, "Whoa!" and just like riding back home and being like, "That was something serious that I like seriously escaped." So I mean, there is something that about gravel riding that I have to say that, shit happens. Like, especially on gravel. I mean, you cannot predict every rock how it's going to react when a 32 millimeter tire runs over it.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, the same in road racing too. Like when you watch professionals race, they're like going around corners and everything's fine and dandy, and then spontaneously someone goes down. It just happens.
Someone just goes like, like, what happened? Well, you'll never know because you weren't riding.
They hit a weird. I mean, there's like 5 grains of sand there, and it just like completely destroyed their traction. And there's
4
nothing
grains
you can
would have
do
been
about
fine.
it.
5 grains was one
exactly
too much.
Right. So it's the nature of the beast, but you still feel like an idiot when it happens. But
well, I agree. I just wanted to point out the fact that like crashing in a race.
Absolutely.
Is by no means a thing of like oh my God, you're incompetent, you don't know how to race. No, it's like you're racing. This is what happens in races.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway, you were saying 10 miles away.
Well, so we got back together, and then we're getting close to the point where it's the last couple of turns. And before this point, I was sort of riding on adrenaline, and things weren't hurting that bad. But now I'm starting to hurt a little bit, and I'm just like, oh, let's get this thing over with. I don't know how much more I can perform, and I've got 2 gears to work with. And so I just wanted to have this thing over with so I could stop thinking about it. And so we're coming up to the very final turn. And at this point, someone had already made an attack, tried to launch off the front. I caught his wheel and got back up with him, and the rest of the group kind of came with me, and so we were back together.
So this is down the pavement of County Road 22.
No. This is all on dirt still. So
okay, so you're before that. Okay.
Before Pleasant. I think Pleasant is the last
51st
turn.
Street. Okay.
Something. Yeah, exactly. So before the turn to 51st Street, someone made an attack. I responded to that, got back on his wheel, and we're sort of back together. And so now we're sort of just all kind of sitting there waiting for the next attack to happen. And so my strategy coming into this point was that last year, the final turn before the pavement to the sprint finish is this really poorly marked turn because it's behind trees, it's hard to see, And last year, I completely...
Actually, it's called Lee's Circle, and it's unmarked on the cues.
Yeah.
It's like you have to
it's
look
not
for
called
their
Pleasant?
sign.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought it was called Pleasant.
No,
But,
well, this is last year. It was
Okay.
Lee's Circle, and then it goes to 51st, and then it goes to Pleasant.
so Pleasant is the one I missed.
Okay. all right.
And this year it actually says on the cue sheets, Pleasant, be careful, it's easy to miss or something. It's not it's hidden or something like that.
Yeah.
And so my strategy coming into this
88.7.
was I was thinking, I missed this turn last year because it's really hard to see. I'm gonna sit back and be in third position or whatever and see if the first
they
two
miss it.
guys miss the turn, and if they do, I'm gonna attack, and this
Yeah.
is how I can win the race.
Right.
And so we're kind of positioning, and I'm getting myself sort of trying to get back a little bit further because I know this turn is coming, and I know exactly where it was. And in fact, when we were driving out to the race, the guy who was leading us out there from his parents' house took us on that road, and he's like, Andrew, is that the turn you missed? And I was like, yep, that was it.
Yep,
so I
that's
even
it.
knew what it looked like coming into it.
Yeah.
So I was ready. And so I was like, okay, this might work. This might actually happen. And people were discussing, like, oh, where's this turn? And he's like, oh, it's somewhere up here. And someone's like, oh, there's the turn, but it was a driveway.
Oh.
And so I was like, okay, they're gonna miss it. They're gonna miss it. And then this big truck comes pulling up in the distance, like out of the turn. I'm like, damn it! And so at this point, I start kind of keep pressing along. The turn's coming, so that option is no longer available to me. And so we round the corner to the turn, and of course, this turn is the last section of gravel road, and it goes up a hill. And so
it's a very gradual gravel
hill.
hill.
It's a very gradual hill, but it's nothing to sneeze at because it's a decent little hill. And so I find myself at the front of the group, so I was like, well, I'm just going to go up this as fast as I can. This is going to end up in a bunch sprint. I'm sure of it, but I think I've got enough left that I can actually podium out of the five of us.
And just so people know, the end half mile of the inspiration is downhill tar.
Downhill and tar, exactly.
Yeah, it's pretty... if you're in the front, you're going to stay in the front, provided you don't let up. So,
yeah, unless someone out sprints you. Yeah. And so we're going up this hill, and I'm in the front, and so I just start turning the screws a little bit, and I look behind me, and the gap is forming. I'm like, oh, crap.
Nope.
I should start pushing. And at this point, I was in my big ring because the hill hadn't really kind of gone up yet. So I keep pushing,
right.
And I was like, shit, I have a gap. Maybe I can hold this. And I look behind me, and people are starting to chase. The remaining four guys are starting to chase. I'm like, oh crap, they're gonna catch me, and I've only got 2 gears. I should sit up. I started to make the old mistakes in my head, And so I switch it down into my small ring and keep climbing at still basically the same pace.
Right.
And I look behind me again after 5 or 6 seconds, thinking that they're right on my tail, and nope, there's still a gap. I'm like, oh crap, I gotta go. And so I keep going, and I push as hard as I can, and now I'm full on, I am attacking, I'm going for broke, this is it, this is my chance to do it. And I get to the top of the hill, and I didn't look back at this point anymore because I said, this is full on committal mode, I have to go. I get to the top of the road, I know I probably still have a bit of a gap, I don't know how much. Get to the top of the road, cars had just gone past, I was like, oh, please don't let there be traffic, because if there's traffic...
if you have to stop, that's it,
Then we're going to be back together, I've already burnt something, and it's going to be a bunch sprint, and it's going to be much, much harder. Fortunately, I get to the top of the road, no traffic is coming, I keep almost all my speed on the pavement, turn onto the pavement, pop it into the big ring, and I get up and start full-on standing sprint into a headwind.
Oh,
so I'm full-on sprinting into a headwind, and it's you got a little bit of a flat section before you hit the downhill.
Yep.
And I'm just sprinting as hard as I can, and my legs say we're going as best we can, and I decide that
say, shut up, legs,
exactly,
go more.
Exactly. I just decide that basically I have to just keep going as best I can, but
shut up, legs.
Yeah.
Yeah, there it is.
But I decide to sit down and just get into the drops and just head down and sprint, because now I've hit in the downhill section, and I don't look behind me, but I keep sort of looking underneath my elbows, just expecting someone to come flying up past me. Because, surely these guys are gonna catch me. There's just no way.
They have more gears than you.
I keep hitting my shifter, hoping that I can convince it somehow to go down. And I hit it once, and I hear a click, but it goes the wrong direction. I'm like, no! And so I keep hitting it, and I hit it again, and now it goes down, and I hit it again, and it goes down again. I'm like, yes, and I keep sprinting, and I keep going, and I hit it again, and it goes back the other direction. And I like
God damn it.
keep hitting it, and it eventually works its way down. I don't think I get all the way down, but I just keep sprinting, and keep sprinting, and keep sprinting. Surely someone's going to catch me. Like, there's just no way they're not going to catch me. Yep. But I keep going, and the finish line keeps getting closer and closer and closer, and like, with 15 feet to go, I'm like, holy crap, I've got this. Yeah. And so I crossed the finish line, my first ever in my life, 2-hand salute. I just felt like I had to do it, and I won the race. And the cool part is,
the amazing thing is that if you look at the finish times, there it is. Oh, that is the trophy.
And I told you last year that
would be yours.
I totally want to win that thing someday. And
well, someday is like only 365 days away.
Exactly.
The funny thing is that if you look at the times for the inspiration, if you go to inspirationgravel.com, I think that's right. Anyway,
Inspiration Gravel.
You look at that. You look at the times for the finishing. It's like there's like 5-6 people all with the same finishing time. Like they're all right in there, like in a minute.
Yeah.
Like, boom, 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 boom. Then that just makes you go, holy crap! There's a lot of strong riders.
Yeah. I mean, so there was 5 of us at the same time, effectively.
Yeah.
I mean, we were separated by.
It was all a matter of the fact of this is that everyone was pushing each other.
Yeah.
To ride as fast as they could, and everyone was also being gentlemanly when someone had a problem.
Right.
And that is like, you have to say like there's a lot of respect that goes with that. And
absolutely. And like when
that is something that goes with free races. Because
I think that goes with racing in general.
Well, but the thing is, like the tour, you're not going to see that in the tour.
No, I think you will.
I don't think
you will. I think you will.
We'll have to have a video fight about this or something, because honestly, I think if someone's like, oh, by the way, I've been training for this for my entire fucking life, I don't care what happens to you.
Well,
I'm going to.
There has been a shift in the last couple of years, but in tours past, when a leader, like someone in the yellow jersey, crashes because of a weird something happening, like there has been like someone in the front will neutralize the race and say, hey guys, like a few years ago, someone threw tacks on the road and flattened a bunch of people, and I think Wiggins at the time or something, like neutralized the race a little bit and say, guys, we're slowing down, letting these people catch on. So
did you say it was Wiggins?
Wiggins, yeah.
Ender's Game.
Anyway,
this is what's happening.
Regardless, my point is
that
by and large,
Orson Scott Card is a prophet. All right.
By and large, people are generally pretty good sports about things, and
I agree
that I've encountered, and that most people will make the good decisions and they're looking out for each other. I mean, regardless of the competitive nature of the whole thing, people are decent people, want to make sure that people are okay. Of course, it's a race, and if someone crashes and you look back and you say, okay, there's someone back there that can help them, we're going to keep racing.
Yeah.
But in this case, when I crashed, there was no one there. They were going to make sure that I was okay and that sort of stuff, and so that was the right thing to do.
That's fantastic. I
mean, that's fantastic. And frankly, like as soon as I crossed the finish line, and I want to say this again, in case any one of these guys is listening, but the first thing I wanted to do, and I tried to do it for all of the guys. I don't think I got all of them, but I wanted to shake their hands and say, thank you for. You didn't need to, but thank you for stopping. That was like a super good sportsmanship and a gentlemanly thing to do. You didn't have to, but thank you for doing that. And like it's sort of a weird thing. Like, I won the race, thanks for stopping. But it's like I just like
Well, that's exactly true though. I mean, it is one thing with bike racing, especially like if you're running. Let's just say you're doing a marathon and someone stumbles next to you and has like a serious like calf cramp or something like that. If you just keep running, you're an asshole.
Yeah.
I mean, like, there's a human and suffering behind you. Like that's not great. So it's kind of the same thing, but at the same time, like if you are one of the people who actually is a human enough to recognize when someone's in pain and be like, let's make sure they're okay, you are the hero.
Oh yeah, and I think
Absolutely.
I mean, I think in racing, there's times where it's okay not, like in crit racing, for example. Like this year, it seems like there was a crash, especially in the 4-5 field. There was a crash every single race, and the race doesn't stop.
Of course, yeah.
And the race doesn't stop.
That's why people try and get out of 4-5.
Yeah, and it doesn't need to stop there either, because there's people on the sidelines, there's the officials there, and those people, are, there's help available. And same in like road racing too. There's chase cars, and like, there's circumstances where the race should be neutralized, and it's in a lot of cases the racers should take the responsibility to neutralize the race if it seems reasonable. But you don't stop every time because someone crashes. But in this case, the reason they did it, and I think the reason why they did it, is because like we're the lead group. There was no one here, and we're also in no danger too of getting caught. And let's just make sure this guy's okay, because we're the only ones out here, and we can keep racing if he's okay enough to at least sit by the side of the road for someone to come and help him out. So there's a judgment call with all those things, but I'm happy that they did it. They didn't need to, but also I think that it just demonstrates a level of goodness that they did. So
I'd actually take 2 points on that. Like, one is that there's a great amount of sportsmanship that goes into people saying someone got hurt, someone got injured, something happened in their race that wasn't their responsibility. Let's let them catch up. Okay, and that's amazing.
Right.
I totally have support for that. But at the same time, I do have to say that there's a lot of respect that I think goes subconsciously in a lot of racers when they say, okay, you crash out, but yet you caught up to us. Like, that is, okay, you got the drive, you're here.
Sure.
Like, let's make this happen, And I think a lot of that happens subconsciously. I don't think that's a lot of choice. I don't think a lot of racers go...
I mean, frankly, like, I wouldn't want to win a race because of the fact that someone crashed. One of my, main rivals was... Like, say I was, like, there was a guy with me, and I knew he was going to be the best person to beat me in a race. I wouldn't want to win because he crashed out, Yeah,
I'm just thinking of this kind of thing. Like, let's just say I'm riding a fat bike race, and I'm riding in snow, and we're all riding, and we're going, fat bike fast, which is like 10, or whatever. We're riding fast, and all of a sudden the guy next to me, and I'm nearly there, his chain breaks or something, because that happens a lot in fat bike, because you're putting so much torque on the chain. His chain breaks, and all of a sudden he's back. I'm like, would I still ride to the finish? Yeah, because he's not hurt.
Right, exactly.
But at the same time, like, would I feel like I won that?
You should. I mean, that's the role of the dice.
I won it. I won it, but at the same time, I would be like, I won it because his bad luck.
Sure, yeah.
So at the same time, like, I would be saying, like, you and me, we should be sharing this trophy in a certain way,
right?
Because, you only won it, or I only won it because of bad luck, or I don't. It's hard to say.
It's hard to say, but I mean, I think the fact, regardless, goes to the point that you recognize you respect the rival enough to say that I won today, maybe because of my own skill alone, but also you had bad luck. I mean, so it's just a general level of respect, and not like a jerkiness, basically. Like,
right.
Sucks to be you, man. I won. That sort of thing. And what the cool part about the people that I rode with is that they had none of that, and
and that's
they were just decent people.
A very rare thing. That's great.
Yeah, no, it was great, and so thanks again to those guys. You didn't need to wait, and thank you, because that was super awesome. So anyway, we have talked.
That's a very rare.
Yeah.
That's
this week in alcohol, baby, 10%.
You people wanted it. Now you got it.
Now you got it. This is what you get. And I think there's only one thing left to do now that we've the clock says 2 hours and 44 minutes. It's going to be less than that with editing. But
it's
there's only one thing left to do, and it's the first time we get to do it.
Last call, yes, last call. This is the last call for your alcohol.
Oh, I like hearing that again.
I know. I've missed it.
I really do.
But so, dear listeners, you found yourself in Last Call. And now this is the point where we talk about the ways that you can get a hold of us at the end of the show. And this is your chance to say, guys, we know we asked for more beer in the podcast, but
this is too much.
We regret it. This is too much. And this is what happens when you have a couple of beers while recording.
You have 3 hours of podcasting.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So the first way you can call or write and complain is to send us an email at supernumber1cast@gmail.com.
Thank you very much for doing that.
Yeah. The second way is to send us short little bursts of, like, why are you doing this? Go back to the old ways of shorter podcasts. You can get a hold of us on Twitter. The show page is supernumber1. My page, or my feed, is the nth Andrew, and Kevin's page, or feed, I keep wanting to call it a page,
it's good, yeah.
Is the 4tree. The other way you can get a hold of us would be on Facebook. Just search Super Number One or Super Number One Cast. You'll
Super
know
Number One Cycling, whatever
you'll find it.
Yeah.
You're smart people.
And if you don't find it, that means you have like problems with typing, and that means like actually you need to talk to someone about your cycling skills.
I agree.
Because like see why that the different side. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, agreed. Finally, if you've made it this far,
please edit that out. That was dumb.
If you've made it this far, nice work. And
thank you.
Well, and the last thing we can ask you to do is leave us a review on iTunes. We would appreciate it. And that's all I have to say, because we're now at 2 hours and 46 minutes of recording time. It's impressive.
I have something to say about recording. All right, I have something to say about leaving us reviews on iTunes. Is that you have no idea how important those are, because when people search for stuff on iTunes, like when I search for stuff, I go, you know what, I'm tired of looking for nothing but transsexual porn. I would like to look for something that's different. And so I type in cycling podcast, and so I type it in. And oh my God, Super Number One shows up there. But the thing is, it'll show up more readily to people who are not looking for porn. If you will, type in, that you really like our show.
It's a good point.
And so, please go on iTunes, go on whichever what. There are many other formats. I don't forget them all.
Like Stitcher.
I do forget them all. Stitcher, iRadio, whatever.
Who knows? Who knows where we can be found?
Yeah.
I don't.
But please, type in there and say hey, we like these guys because they are X, whatever it is, or we hate these guys because they are X.
Because they drink too much beer during the show.
Yeah. Just leave us an honest review, and we will very much appreciate it. I have a feeling that I'll appreciate it more than Andrew will right now, because I've had 3 of these large beers. The thing is, they're only 12 ounces, but man.
I've had a few of mine. I think I'm about even with you. So we're
well, I don't think you're even, because you're going and so I raced and I won, and I'm going I like winning, dude. And I'm just basically splurting adjectives at this point. I'm not even doing adjectives. I'm just making up words.
You're just splurting.
Andrew, we have come back to Super Number One.
Yes, we have.
It's just sad. I'm sorry.
It feels warm and cozy, though. I gotta say that. So
Coda, my dog, who is laying his head on my lap, is going, Daddy, you said you'd never do this again. And I'm saying, I'm sorry.
Sorry, yeah.
I'm sorry, buddy. But the thing is, no, look at me. Look at me. Look at me. We can't fight our nature.
Yes, it's just who we are.
It's who we are. I'm sorry.
Before I end the live feed, good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
But I want to show you one thing one more time.
Oh, please do. Oh.
That was fun. I enjoyed that. Good night.